71st session of the Senate in the first regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Sani Angara will lead us in prayer.
Lord, you are worthy of our honor and praise. Lubos ang aming pagkilala sa inyong kadakilan at kabanalan, kaya't kami nagsusumamo sa inyo na kami inyong tulungan sa aming tungkulin. May we toil diligently to bring about solutions to the pressing issues of these times. Lead us, guide us, that we may fulfill a life based on your calling. Strengthen the resolve and compassion of all the members in this chamber, that we may serve with renewed clarity of vision to unify and lead this nation to progress. Gabayan niyo po kami sa aming pagsisilbi sa bayan para sa kapakanan ng aming kapwa. May our words be dependable and true. May our actions be according to your desire and purpose. In whatever we do, may we labor in love, in faith, and in hope for your people as unto you. This is our prayer. Amen.
Amen. Secretary, please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Hontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soveri, Senate President Pimentel.
With 17 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 70th session, Monday, March 6, 2017, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we'd like to welcome some guests in the Senate. We have the Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Mexico, Ricardo Sanchez Mendez. The faculty members of the San Juan National Junior Senior High School led by Principal Lucila Artuyo, and the guests of Senator Legarda from Mansalay Oriental Mindoro, the Vice Mayor Lynette Posma, Councilor Leo Macareg, Councilor Ernesto Gustilo, Councilor Gerald Paul Cristalino, and SB Secretary Jebert De Chavez, and guests of Senator Subiri, councilors of Bonifacio, Misamis Occidental. We also earlier had the Congresswoman Geraldine Roman.
Of Bataan. So welcome to all of our guests.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Senator Pangilinan wants to be recognized. What's the pleasure of the senator?
Clarification. Jordan? Okay.
Mr. President, just a clarification before we proceed in a manifestation. I have a copy of the agenda for today that is distributed every session day. And in item number, Roman numeral number 7, Committee Report number 8, Senate Bill 1233. This is the COCO levy measure, Mr. President. Just to avoid any confusion, as this is, I understand, this serves as a guide for our colleagues. We just need to correct that to interpolate, the following have already terminated their interpellation, Senator Recto and Senator Gordon. And today, I just spoke with Senator Escudero. He is also, he will no longer interpolate without prejudice to raising some clarificatory questions during the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Just for the correction and guidance of our colleagues, Mr. President.
We'll place that on record, Mr. President, and make sure that if there are no other interpolators, or if there are any interpolators, we'll inform the sponsor, Mr. President.
Mr. President, with the permission of the Majority Leader.
Go ahead, sir.
Another correction. Senator Pacquiao just approached me. He too has requested that he will no longer, or has manifested that he will no longer interpolate. So, unless there are other reservations, we can tackle this later, Mr. President. For the record.
Yes, we'll tackle it later,
At the
Mr.
proper
President.
time, the
At the proper time,
manifestation
because
would be repeated.
I was going to inform the sponsor that I was going to interpolate, Mr. President, so we'll do that later. Thank you. May
So
I
the-
proceed now to move for the reference of business, Mr.
Is
President?
there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Secretary, please.
Bills on first reading. 1362, entitled An Act Amending Section 6 of Republic Act Number 6958, otherwise known as an Act Creating the Mactan Cebu International Airport Authority, transferring existing assets of the Mactan International Airport and the Lahug International Airport to the authority, vesting the authority with power to administer and operate the Mactan International Airport and the Lahug Airport and for other purposes by Senator Subiri.
Referred to the Committees on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises and Public Services.
1364, an act to preserve the evidence generated from security cameras by Senator Laila De Lima.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Finance.
Resolutions, resolution number 311, resolution directing the Senate Committee on National Defense and Security to investigate, in aid of legislation, the criminal activities of the Abu Sayyaf group and other lawless groups, including the recent beheading of a German national, with the end in view of strengthening the capacity of government forces, particularly the armed forces, to combat and neutralize such groups. Senator Laila De Lima.
To the Committee on National Defense and Security.
Resolution number 312, entitled Resolution Condemning the Dehumanizing and Degrading Treatment by certain members of the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, the Philippine National Police, and the Armed Forces of the Philippines of Cebu Provincial Detention and Rehabilitation Center, inmates, last 28 February 2017, urging the Commission on Human Rights to bring the hearing officers and their officials before the bar of justice, and directing the Committee on Justice and Human Rights to conduct an investigation thereon with the end in view of enacting remedial legislation. Senator Laila De Lima.
To the Committee on Rules.
313, resolution directing the proper Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the need to promote zero tourism waste policy. Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay.
To the Committees on Environment and Natural Resources and Tourism.
314, resolution directing the appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the occurrence of road accidents emanating from the inefficient vehicle inspection and registration processes, with the end in view of establishing stricter inspection procedures and enforcing penalties to hearing licensing officials of the Land Transportation Office and Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board. Senator Laila De Lima.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Committee reports. Committee report number 44, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development on Senate Bill number 1363, with Senator Joel Villanueva as author thereof, entitled An Act Institutionalizing Telecommunicating in the Workplace and for Other Purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill number 1033, Senator Joel Villanueva.
Telecommuting. To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 45, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Foreign Relations on Senate Bill number 1365, with Senators Richard J. Gordon, Cynthia Villar, Recto, Joseph Victor Ejercito, Ligarda, Sonny Angara, Joel Villanueva, Grace Po, and Cayetano as authors thereof, entitled An Act Extending the Validity of Philippine Passports, amending for the purpose Section 10 of Republic Act Number 8239, otherwise known as the Philippine Passport Act of 1996, and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill numbers 109, 324, 795, and 1179, taking into consideration Senate Bill numbers 397 and proposed PS Resolution number 142 and House Bill number 4767, Senator Cayetano.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Richard Gordon wants to seek the floor.
Is there any objection? There being none, Senator Gordon is recognized.
With the permission of the President and the body, I just would like to make a manifestation. The other day, right before the Las Cañas hearing, I was told by my staff that a statement was made that I was guilty of, returning a witness that had lied, like Las Cañas. And I think Senator Ontiveros I just stand up here to make that clarification. I already told Senator Ontiveros about this, and I just want to make it straight for the record that such was not the case. In the case of Las Cañas, we had already submitted our report, and then after several months, he decided to come back here, and after having perjured himself, he decides to come back and come out with another testimony. In the matter presented by Senator Ontiveros noted that in a 2009 Blue Ribbon Committee, of which I was chairman, hearing on the 728 million fertilizer fund scam, Fashion Philippines President Julie Gregorio recanted an earlier statement on the cost of fertilizers. She belied her earlier claim that the fertilizers cost per bottle, admitting that they really only cost 150 pesos each. Back then, I was quoted to have said, ang recantation malinaw, admission against interest practically yun, dahil ang sinasabi niya nangyari ito nung napilitan siya kasi gusto niyang ipagbili yung stock ng fashion at nabigyan siya ng pagkakataon. Close quotes. Assuming such to be true, a fuller recitation of facts become necessary, if only to provide us a whole picture of what happened. Gregorio on December 22 testified as to the price of the fertilizer, with 600 pesos per bottle. And this is on the record of the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Monday, December 22, 2008, page 276. And I quote, the chairman, nagsara dahil ang laki ng kita bigla. Magkano ba ang puhunan nyo doon sa 50 million na yon? Ms. Gregorio, 473 per bottle. The chairman, 463 per bottle at pinasan yun ng Ms. Gregorio, landed cost po 600. Pinasa nyo ng 600 pesos according to the chairman. Ms. Gregorio, opo. The chairman, so almost 140 ang tubo ninyo. Ms. Gregorio, opo. On January 20, she testified as to the real price of the fertilizer, which is 150 pesos per bottle. Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Tuesday, January 20, 2009, page 210. And again, I quote, Ms. Gregorio, Fashion Philippines Incorporated sold to Ms. Aitona and Ms. Lerena the fertilizer at 150 pesos per bottle, as evidenced by the 22 delivery receipts covering 90,092 bottles and 17 order slips signed by one Cecil A. Clemente, Malin Araos, and Bing Salvador, whom I know to be employees of Ms. Aitona. I received a total amount of 13,013,800 from Ms. Lerena, represented by 11 land bank checks and cash of 500,000 pesos from Ms. Aitona. 3. When she changed some parts of her story, especially the price of the fertilizer, in the sale to Araos Trading, with which her company entered into a MOA, from 150 pesos to 600 pesos, Gregorio was still on the stand. In other words, she had not been dismissed. Gregorio changed her testimony because she got very, very afraid that we were going to go after her for perjury precisely because she was lying. In fact, she even went to my office and I told her we would throw the book at her. And because of that, I just want to point out that while she had not been dismissed or discharged yet as a witness, unlike Mr. Las Cañas, hers was a continuing testimony, Mr. Chairman, and thus her change in story on the 20th of January cannot be viewed but a mere continuation. To make clear, while she testified as to a story, she changed parts of her story during her same testimony, supported by affidavits submitted beforehand. When Gregorio changed part of her story, she did it while the committee was still in the continuation or process of its hearings. The committee had not terminated its hearings yet, nor had it drafted, routed for signature, and submitted a committee report. This was part of the unraveling of all the shenanigans that was occurring in the fertilizer scam that we investigated, Mr. Chairman. I would not tolerate a liar testifying before us, especially after I have submitted the report, especially for somebody who claims to have killed 300 people, and somebody who claims that he had, a spiritual renewal in the month of July 2016, only to come before the committee, harap dito on September, and in spite of the renewal, lies once more to his teeth in a very calm, deliberate, cogent manner, answers questions, and then later on takes capital of that after his testimony, goes with the Davao squad, not the dead squad, but the Davao squad, obviously lobbying for STL funds, for a terminal port contract, for quarrying contract, and one more. Customs, Your Honor. So which means this man is accustomed to lying, Mr. President. In fact, I just wanted to point it out, and I said this man has lost his moral compass, and that is why I vehemently stood up here, unmindful of the possible popular backlash, because I thought that the Senate has been slurred by his testimony, latter testimony. And having said that, there's a whale of difference between somebody who is still on the stand and changing his testimony under pressure from the chairman, under cross, changing his testimony, and finally telling the truth against interest, while still on the stand, and before the committee had submitted the report. I have no grievance against the Honorable Senator. She's a friend of mine, and I just want to set the record straight. I just want to point it out. I spoke to her yesterday, Senator De Veros, and I have no grievance against her. I have no ill feelings. I just wanted to make sure that the record is set straight because it came out on national radio, and I saw it on my Facebook account that some people were saying that I was taking a double standard. Far from it, Mr. Chairman. We unraveled that testimony with Ms. Gregorio crumbling and finally coming out stating the truth while still under the stand and as a witness. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you. What's the Majority Leader? Senator Ontiveros is raising her hand. What's the pleasure of the good senator?
Mr. President and good Majority Leader, I'd just like to make a brief manifestation.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank the good gentleman for confirming that there was a witness in Blue Ribbon who recanted, and it was accepted. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. We take note of the manifestation. And while we're at the issue of manifestations, if you will notice, if our colleagues will notice in the agenda, it was the thinking of this representation and the Senate President that we prioritize at least 2 or 3 of the major bills that we will be able to pass until next week. So that is the reason why we have placed the more debatable issues or controversial issues towards the end of the agenda. We wanted to make sure that these pieces of legislation will get prioritized and be passed on third reading at least next week. I'm sure the Senate President will confirm that particular idea that we discussed. So with that, Mr. President, I move, with the permission of the body, there is always, the next on the agenda that I will call for, Mr. President, is not really an exemption, but it's merely a sponsorship, so it will not take much time of the Senate. So I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special order, Senate Bill 1363 under Committee Report Number 44.
Any objection? There being none, so transferred.
I move to consider Senate Bill 1363 under Committee Report Number 44.
Any objection? There being none, we now proceed to consider Senate Bill number 1363 under Committee Report number 44.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may I ask the Chairman of the Committee on Labor, Senator Joel Villanueva, be recognized.
Any objection? There being none, Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is my honor and privilege to sponsor Senate Bill number 1363 under Committee Report number 44, or an act institutionalizing telecommuting in the workplace and for other purposes. Mr. President, telecommuting is a flexible work arrangement. It deviates from the normal setup of work, which are usually within the confines of office cubicles or central workstations. It is working from anywhere other than a company's office or workplace, or more popularly known as working remotely or working from home. Because telecommuting is triggered by internet-based communication system and mobile-oriented mindset, it makes commuting or traveling to a central place of work irrelevant or unnecessary. Nagtanong po ako, Mr. President, sa mga college students at fresh grads kung ano ang ideal work schedule sa kanila. Hindi na po ako nasurpresa na karamihan sa kanila ayaw sa 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. jobs. Para sa mga kabataan o millennials, ang ideal work schedule ay any time of the day and at the most convenient time and place. In short, work from home at online jobs ang ideal na trabaho ngayon. Under Section 3 of the proposed bill, telecommuting is defined as the partial or total substitution of computers or telecommunication technologies, or both, for the commute to work by employees. Ito po ang mga trabahong nakabase sa bahay o mga trabahong ginagawa sa ibang lugar maliban sa opisina o karaniwang lugar ng trabaho ng isang manggagawa sa tulong ng internet o mobile services. Mr. President, your Committee on Labor seeks to institutionalize telecommuting because we believe that working from home is every worker's right. It is relevant to the needs of millennials or the new workforce. It is sensitive to the changing needs of employers. Tama yung mga kabataang nakausap ko. Bakit pa kailangan mag-report on duty kung pwede namang mag-login na lang sa computer? Sa halip na mag-DTR o Daily Time Record o biometrics para sa attendance, pwede namang tingnan na lang kung online o naka-access sa virtual private network ng kumpanya ang empleyado. Ang mahalaga po, ma-deliver ang inaasahang output na trabaho. Senate Bill number 1363 or the Telecommuting Act of 2017 will allow our workers to work from home, subject to the approval of their employers and enhance their ability to get their jobs done. Mr. President, gusto ko pong ipakita sa inyo ang ilan sa mga telecommuters na nakilala at nakausap natin para lubos nating maintindihan ang telecommuting. Una po ay si Lisa na taga Baguio City. May full-time work pero hindi naman siya umaalis ng bahay nila sa Baguio City. Ang opisina niya ay ang sala ng kanilang bahay. Gamit po ang isang computer at internet connection na sagot ng kanilang kumpanya, nagagawa po niya ang lahat ng kanyang work responsibilities. Dahil ang trabaho niya ay nakabase sa bahay, hands-on si Lisa sa kanyang 3 anak. Sabi nga po niya, literal na stress-free ang kanyang nakuhang trabaho. Para sa kanya, na-achieve niya ang work-life balance dahil sa telecommuting. Lisa shared that her company is using computer application and a camera that help her manager monitors her work at home. This is to ensure that she is productive, accountable, and in touch. To be an effective telecommuter, Lisa said that expertise on ICT and certain personality traits are required. Ikalawa po ay si Ariel, isang licensed electronics and communications engineer at Next Generation Delivery Model Center Process Coach sa isang multinational information technology company dito po sa Taguig City. Di tulad ni Lisa, telecommuter o work from home si Ariel isang araw lang kada linggo. May mutual agreement po sa pagitan niya at ng kanyang company manager para ma-avail ang telecommuting. Sagot ni Ariel ang gastos sa internet at computer dahil hindi naman siya regular telecommuter. Pero di nabale, sabi niya, dahil iyon naman ang pinakamagaang araw niya sa isang buong linggo dahil hindi niya kailangan magbiyahe ng 4 na oras papunta sa kanyang opisina sa Taguig at pabalik sa kanyang apartment mula sa Muñoz sa Quezon City. Para po kay Ariel, iwas sa malubhang traffic at tipid sa pamasahe ang telecommuting, lalo na at wala siyang ibang dinadaanang papasok sa kanyang trabaho kundi ang EDSA. Ariel's job includes training and coaching the new availability assurance team members in the global and regional centers. To be able to use the tools and apply different methodologies like Six Sigma and outage analysis methodology, change management techniques, among others. Ikatlo po ay si Doreen, na empleyado naman ng isang multinational manufacturer ng family, personal, and household care products. Siya po ang humahawak ng payroll ng mga expat sa kanilang kumpanya sa BGC. Dahil regular employee siya ng kanilang kumpanya, entitled po siya sa 1 hanggang 2 araw na telecommuting kada linggo. Tulad ni Ariel, pre-aligned ito sa kanyang manager, pero malinaw ang patakaran sa telecommuting dahil may written policy po sila. Ang maganda po, basta regular employee, pwedeng mag-avail ng telecommuting. Sabi ni Doreen, nagagawa po niyang magbakasyon at magtrabaho at the same time dahil sa telecommuting. Sabi niya, long weekend siya palagi kapag natatapat sa Webes at Biyernes ang work from home niya. Dahil dito, mas productive at higit sa lahat, sabi niya, mas masaya po siya sa kanyang trabaho. Doreen shared with us the telecommuting entitles her to a monthly work from home allowance equivalent to the monthly internet package that she has at home. More so, she received a one-time working from home allowance for home office setup that includes air conditioning unit, desks, chairs, among others. Panghuli po at ika-4 ay si Dan. Isa po sa mga human resource people advisor ng isang IT company dito po sa Cubao, Quezon City. Sa kumpanya po niya, diskresyon ng employer kung magbibigay ng telecommuting privilege sa mga empleyado. Bagamat walang written policy on telecommuting sa kanilang kumpanya, sabi po niya, ang rule of thumb ay basta't walang face-to-face meetings, pwedeng mag-telecommute. Para kay Dan, pang-millennial ang telecommuting, pero madali din daw itong pag-aralan dahil kahit sinong empleyado na marunong gumamit ng VPN o Virtual Private Network. VPN allows telecommuters to connect to the company network from home or anywhere else. As a people advisor in their company, Dan believes that the more freedom employees has and increased flexibility in the workplace, the longer they stay in the company. On the other hand, telecommuting benefits the company by having to spend less in on-site resources. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Lisa, Ariel, Doreen, and Dan clearly illustrate how telecommuting addresses family obligations, reduces expenses and commute or travel time, improves productivity, and sustains employee motivation. Is telecommuting a new practice in business? Not at all, Mr. President. In a report of the International Labor Organization, telecommuting started in the 80s. Now, telecommuting is a global practice which is observed in the Asia-Pacific region, Americas, Europe, and parts of the Middle East, especially in components of work-like communication and architecture. Unfortunately, Mr. President, very few companies have adopted telecommuting in the Philippines. Liza, Ariel, Doreen, and Dan are privileged and blessed for having to telecommute. But with the advancement in technology, Mr. President, I am sure that many employers will follow suit. In 2014, the U.S. software company VMware Incorporated conducted a study involving corporations with more than 500 employees in the Philippines. They found out that 70% of the respondents who work on the go claimed that they were more productive and more creative. Also, Mr. President, 93% said that they use their smartphones for work, while 73% said that working from home is an ideal work. This may be the reason why, according to ECOP, Mr. President, there is a growing acceptance of telecommuting in many workplaces such as Meralco, SGS, Metro Pacific Investments Corp., and Aboitiz Equity Ventures. In 2016, Mr. President, DOLE also reported that there are 261 companies with employees who are under voluntary flexible arrangements. Mr. President, the committee, your committee, look into the best practices in telecommuting to ensure that more employers will adopt telecommuting in the workplace. First, Mr. President, telecommuting is employer's prerogative. It will be the discretion of the employer to offer telecommuting program to its workers based on a mutual agreement. That's in Section 3 of the bill. Second, telecommuting is voluntary. We considered several factors why companies opt to telecommute, but we cannot make this mandatory because enterprises are differently situated. However, the bill guarantees that any telecommuting program should not be less than the minimum labor standards set by law as provided in Section 4 of the proposed measure. Third, Mr. President, telecommuting treats employees fairly. The committee would like to emphasize that employers should ensure that its telecommuting employees are given the same treatment as that of comparable employees working at the employer's premises. Fourth, telecommuters are not isolated. Employers must ensure that measures are taken to prevent the telecommuting employee from being isolated from the rest of the working community in the company. Fifth and finally, Mr. President, telecommuters are protected. The employer will be responsible for taking the appropriate measures with regard to software to ensure the protection of data used and processed by the telecommuting employee for professional purposes. The committee included for this purpose the provisions of the Data Privacy Act of 2013 to have suppletory effect, and that is found in Section 6 of the proposed measure. Mr. President, hinihikayat din po ng panukalang batas na ito ang Department of Labor and Employment na tuloy-tuloy na pag-aralan kung anong mga trabaho ang angkop sa telecommuting at humanap ng mga pamamaraan upang mapalakas ang telecommuting sa iba't ibang industriya. Sa pag-aaral po ng DOLE noong 2014, ang mga trabahong swak na swak sa telecommuting ay encoders at transcriptionists, web developers, programmers, at customer service assistants. Ngunit, Mr. President, base sa mga kwento na ating narinig, ni Lisa, Ariel, Doreen at Dan, pasok din pala maging mga engineers, HR managers, at people advisor. Mr. President, we submit Senate Bill 1363 under Committee Report number 44 so that telecommuting employees will not be subject to arbitrary policy changes, which may happen if telecommuting is governed by simply a department order. The committee subscribes to the belief that a more stable and consistent legal framework will provide an enabling environment that will encourage participation and impose compliance among enterprises. Marami pong pag-aaral, Mr. President, ang nagsasabi kung mas maluwag ang schedule o mas maraming panahon para sa kanilang pamilya o sa personal nilang buhay ang mga manggagawa, mas magiging produktibo sila. Kung hindi sila susuong sa napakabigat na traffic araw-araw o mabubutas ang bulsa sa pamasahe, mas ngingitian nila ang mga trabaho nila. Mr. President, our workers have the right to a work-life balance. They have the right to flexible work arrangement. They have the right to be allowed to work from home. Ipasa po natin ang Senate Bill number 1363 para sa kapakanan ng mga manggagawang bumubuhay sa ekonomiya ng bansa habang nagtatrabaho sa loob ng kanilang mga tahanan o saan mang lugar, malayo sa kumpanyang kanilang pinagtatrabahuhan. Thank you so much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Mabuhay po, and God bless us all.
What's the pleasure of Senator Poe?
If they are going
Majority
to
Leader?
co-sponsor, Mr. President, I will ask that they be recognized. Otherwise, I will suspend consideration, Mr. President.
What's the pleasure of
Co-sponsor, is
the...
it? Support, Mr. President.
So, Senator Poe
The
is...
minority leader will have a headache. May we recognize Senator Hontiveros and
Senator Poe raised her hand first.
and then Senator Hontiveros.
Yes, okay. Senator Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, good afternoon. I'd like to state my support for the Telecommuting Act bill of Senator Joel Villanueva. This is exactly what we've been pushing for. In my emergency powers bill, part of the provision that we are advocating is to implement alternative sources of working. But as Senator Lacson and I have discussed, this will not be possible if we continue with our slow-paced internet speed. Therefore, we have to be able to invest in infrastructure, and in the emergency powers bill, we will suspend the local government discretion on implementing too many permits in erecting a cell site. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Grace. Thank you.
Senator Hontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good majority leader. Nais ko pong pasalamatan yung sponsor nitong Senate Bill number 1363 dahil meron din pong gender aspect, Mr. President, itong telecommuting in the workplace. Mas marami pong makikinabang na working moms dito rin po sa panukalang ito. Kaya't maraming salamat po sa kanila at mabuhay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Riza. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
President, to give time to the other members to study the proposed measure, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1277 under Committee Report number 19. I'm sorry. The Senate Bill 1363 under Committee Report number 44.
Any objection? There being none, we suspend consideration of the measure.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1277 under Committee Report number 19.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
This is the Free Internet Access Act. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we already started with the individual amendments. So we therefore move to open the continuation of the period of individual amendments and recognize the sponsor, Chairman of the Committee on Science and Technology, Senator Bam Aquino, and to introduce individual amendments, the Senate President Pro Tem, Senator Ralph Recto, afterwards, and Senator Subiri, Mr. President.
To continue with the period for individual amendments, the sponsor, Senator Aquino and Senator Recto, are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at the outset, I will take this opportunity to thank the good sponsor for his patience in responding to our clarificatory questions and for his openness in welcoming amendments to the bill, if only to ensure that the free public internet will be implemented successfully. I appreciate that many of these representations' position and recommendations as elucidated during the interpellations have already been captured in the sponsor's individual amendments. Again, thank you very much to our distinguished sponsor. For the record, please allow me to cite these amendments as follows. First, in Section 11 on public-private partnership. The sponsor's amendments adopted a paragraph of Senate Bill number 816, which I authored, that requires private service providers to exchange data traffic at domestic internet protocol or IP exchanges, as may be designated by the DICT. This is expected to lower costs and increase and improve free internet access in public spaces covered by the program. Second, under Section 12, the sponsor's amendments has incorporated a section from my bill on the transparent usage policy that will ensure equitable access of individuals to free internet with no other restrictions imposed unless there is a clear and present security or technical risk. This section also includes a proviso that no fee shall be collected for use of free internet in public places. Third, a new Section 15 was added, which restores the same provision on the establishment of Free Public Internet Access Fund, or the FPIAF, under the administration of the DICT. The spectrum user fees collection of the NTC shall form part of this fund. It will be noted that as of fiscal year 2015, total SUV collections amount to 2.5 billion pesos. This is a significant amount that can substantially finance the implementation of the Free Public Internet Program. Mr. President, Your Honor, may I now proceed with my additional individual amendments using the amended copy as of March 6, 2017. On page 2, line 6, delete the word all. On the same page 2, line 21, after the word program, insert a new sentence to read as follows. Provided that the fees to be collected should be just and reasonably sufficient to cover the cost of supervision and regulation.
Excuse me, Senator Recto. Your amendment involves two lines, different lines,
On page 2, line 6.
and then the other one,
Yes, we
line 21.
Yes.
So can we
go line by line, Mr.
Can we
President.
do it one by one? So
Okay, on page 2, line 6, delete the word all.
we accept, Mr. President, and as a matter of style, we capitalize the letter N.
That is correct. Thank you.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Okay. On the same page 2, line 21, after the word program, insert a new sentence to read as follows. Provided that the fees to be collected should be just and reasonably sufficient to cover the cost of supervision and regulation.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection?
Thank you.
Hearing none, the proposed amendment is approved.
On the same page 2, between line 25 and 26, insert a new paragraph to read as follows. Failure on the part of the issuing agency to release the applied license without informing the applicant business entity of the errors, omissions, or additional documents required shall mean automatic approval of the license or permit applied for within 7 days after submission of the applicant business entity of the complete requirements and payment of the corresponding fees. Provided, however, that in case where the cause of delay is due to force majeure or natural or man-made disaster which may result to damage or destruction of documents, the prescribed processing time shall be suspended and appropriate adjustments shall be made.
Mr. President, if I may ask a clarificatory question. Agency also refers to the LGUs, just for the
Yes,
record.
that is correct.
In that case, Mr. President, we happily accept.
Thank you.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 11, delete the word license fee in the title of section 10.
We accept, Mr. President.
On line 12, delete,
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
on line 12, delete the word license free.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 13, after the word spectrum, insert the phrase, and shall be exempt from payment of all fees and charges.
We accept, Mr. President.
What line is that?
Line 13.
13. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Okay, and on line 13, we were on line 13 after the word spectrum, right? That was accepted, right?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, so we move on. On lines 13 and 14, delete the phrase free access to internet service as well as for other public service purposes and replace with the phrase free public internet access program.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 16, delete the word license free.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 17, after the word private, add the word partner.
We accept, Mr. President.
And on the
Any
same line,
objection? Hearing none, approved.
and on the same line, replace the word department to the initials DICT, just for consistency.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 17C, delete the words private individuals and entities.
We accept, Mr. President.
And
Any
replace,
objection? To be replaced?
and
Okay.
replace with the private sector.
Okay.
We accept, Mr. President.
So just one amendment, no?
Yes.
Deletion and replacement. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 17C to 17E, delete the sentence that reads as follows. Private sector participants to the implementation of the program shall not be required to secure franchise from the Congress and local government units.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, lines 17F to 17I, reword the paragraph to read as follows. The excess capacity of private sector partners may be offered to deliver supplemental internet access service for a reasonable fee to the users in the areas where program facilities are located, provided that said individuals or entities register to the NTC as value-added service providers.
We accept, Mr. President.
So it's to replace the paragraph.
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Page 3A. On page 3A, line 20, after the word DICT, add the words "and its private sector partners."
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 21, after the words "on the," add the words "cost and."
On the cost and quality, that's correct, sir?
That's correct.
It will now read that way.
Mr. President, can we read the sentence, please?
Yes. Okay, so from line 36, the DICT and its private sector partners shall periodically collect, update, and publish such information on the cost and quality of internet service in program sites.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 22, delete the words "without need of prior approval of request."
This is page 3A, Mr. President?
Page 3,
3A.
line 22.
Line 22.
Okay. We accept, Mr. President.
Delete, no?
Delete.
Okay, any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On lines
With the period after information, Mr. President, as a matter of syntax.
yes, correct.
Yes, we deleted the phrase of
Without need of prior approval.
the sentence will
request.
end with the word information, period.
Yes, period.
Period.
Thank you.
On lines 28D to 28E, delete National Telecommunications Commission and just retain the initials NTC for consistency.
We accept, Mr. President.
28D, yes. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, lines 30 to 31, also for consistency, replace the words Department of Information and Communication Technology and the National Telecommunications Commissions with the initials DICT and NTC respectively.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
And finally, on the long title, replace the word thereof with therefore.
We accept, Mr. President.
Well, again,
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
thank you, Mr. President, to our Majority Leader, and to
Thank
the
you.
distinguished sponsor. Congratulations.
We
Thank
would
you.
like to thank the Senate President pro tempore for all of his suggestions and his leadership on this matter since for the past number of years, Mr. President.
Can the chair ask a clarificatory question? Through the amendments of Senator Recto, we now deleted the phrase license free. Does that change any concept or idea of
No,
of the
Mr.
bill?
President.
It does not?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President, may we now recognize Senator Nick Subiri for his individual amendments.
Senator Subiri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I ask the sponsor if he'll kindly take in consideration one amendment?
Of course, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the onset, of course, I'd like to say that we're in full support of this program, free Wi-Fi for our people, especially on for the urban poor and rural poor that have no access to Wi-Fi. But also, I'd like to state for the record, Mr. President, that we are also pushing for public health and safety for the people in the light of the fact that the recent studies have shown that EMF radiation possibly can cause cancer or is a possible carcinogenic under the World Health Organization report, new report from the WHO. So, Mr. President, if the good sponsor will allow, an amendment on a new section rather, that will read as follows. Section 8, protection of public health. And it would read, the DOH, the DICT, and the telecommunications company shall ensure the protection of public health from harmful or hazardous effects of electromagnetic field or EMF radiation and other radioactive materials of telecommunication infrastructure and facilities, such as, but not limited to relay stations, repeaters, boosters, and telecommunication towers. Period. The construction of the above-mentioned telecommunication facilities shall be within a safe distance or a provision of buffer zones from residential areas, public buildings, public parks, and recreational facilities, and densely populated areas, period. Finally, such facilities shall also bear warning signages or signage that close and constant contact with such facilities is harmful or hazardous to health, and renumber the affected succeeding sections, if it's all right.
We accept, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. That's all.
Wait a minute. Any objection? Senator Recto?
Just a clarification, I was listening to the amendment, and it would appear na posibleng bawal na ilagay all these facilities in all these areas.
Well,
It could be a killer amendment to the purpose of the bill, Mr. President.
hindi naman po. What we want to happen is there's designated Wi-Fi areas. What you don't want to happen, sir, is if like in a park, kami sa park namin, meron pong mapakalakas na repeater station dyan ng isang telecommunications company that we are now complaining about because it is sending EMF signals all throughout the park which our children play. And my child, I have a 2-year-old that plays there every day. So we are exposing these children to possible leukemia and other blood and cancer diseases with prolonged exposure. So, ang request lang natin, Mr. President, the idea is to come up with designated areas. So within the park, this corner is the Wi-Fi zone. Kasi pwede naman po nila, depending on the strength of the Wi-Fi, you can actually limit it to like within a radius of 100 meters, within a radius of 200 meters. Wag lang po yung blast, how do you say, Wi-Fi that even those who don't want to be exposed to this EMF radiation have no choice. And these are areas that are always frequented by the public. So I hope the good gentleman understands my point.
Mr. President, for example, in an airport facility, free public Wi-Fi or in the MRT, LRT, bawal na ba yun?
Hindi naman. Pag
Based
may
on that
signage naman po,
amendment.
Mr. President, it says here naman, as long as the signages are present, that this is a Wi-Fi area, and that, as I said, no, together with the DOH and DICT, they have to come up with the particular wordings to show that
My
this is a
only
Wi-Fi
problem,
area.
Mr. President, it is an additional red tape. If, will that require now a permit from the Department of Health?
No, Mr. President. If I may enter the fray, there's no permit from the Department of Health, but during the IRR, the DOH, upon its determination, can determine safe areas. No, the danger of these transmitters is really yet to be fully determined, Mr. President.
Yes, and that's my point. If we don't know, if there's no empirical data yet,
Yet,
and
Mr.
we're
President.
incorporating that in the bill,
Well, Mr. President, no, and I don't want to speak for Senator Zubiri, but my understanding is that if ever there is empirical data that show that there is a danger zone, that we just make sure that people are away from that danger zone. But currently, there's no empirical data yet on the danger of these transmitters, unless it's very, very close.
Actually, Mr. President, no, I don't want to go into the debate, but if you go on the internet now and you Google, there's probably 1,000 articles on empirical data on EMF radiation. As a matter of fact, that's the reason why Green Meadows does not have a tower of any telecommunications company, because when they put one 10 years ago, they developed 45 cases of cancer in the direct line of the EMF towers. 20 of those already died, and 25 are fighting for their lives. I can show you in a hearing, which I will be hearing, because I think it's a Consumer Protection Act, and we will show you the number of cases now, and one in Cebu, where there are actually cancer clusters right below an EMF tower. Yung akin, Mr. President, is just to warn the people. We're not going to stop Wi-Fi. We're not going to stop the technology. What we want to do is, in the areas where they boost the signal, let's put the signages that these areas are quite, are where the signal, existing EMF radiation is being boosted out.
So for example, let's work that out here in the Senate. We have Wi-Fi here right now. So where should that sign be?
Where the Wi-Fi routers are, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. So where the Wi-Fi routers are, we can put a sign there that these areas are emitting, this is to the area where it's transmitting all the Wi-Fi. And you can put a warning sign there if you want.
And what should
depending on
it
how
be?
you
It's
word it.
100 meters from that Wi-Fi transmitter.
That's to be determined. That's why it has to be determined by the DOH and the ICT on the proper distance.
Yeah, my problem is that, the purpose of the bill is to provide internet access. And in certain areas, Wi-Fi connectivity. In schools, for example, in public hospitals, in plazas and parks, in ports, airports, so on and so forth. Now, if we're saying that this is harmful, then let's find out whether or not it is really actually harmful.
I personally believe it's very harmful, Mr. President. And the problem is whenever you discuss this with people, especially in the subdivisions, they'll always say, no, we want the cell site signal. And then when you tell them, okay, can we put it in front of your house? No, we don't want it in front of our house. So everything's okay unless it's not in your backyard. The thing is, we're exposing the public to, I personally feel, what could be dangerous and harmful EMF radiation. It's like microwave. It's a microwave technology. So in the United States now, empirical data has found out that it's coming close to the #1 cause of death in the US is cancer. And they're now trying to figure it out. Is it because they microwave all their food? Is it because they have Wi-Fi access in everywhere they go?
Mr. President.
20 years ago, if I may, Mr. President, 30 years ago, people didn't think that smoking while you're pregnant was a bad thing. It's only now that they realized that actually smoking while you're pregnant can actually cause birth defects for children. So my worry is, we all have children, whether they're teenagers or very young children. We want to have a safe area for them to work and play. And that is what I'm asking is, Mr. President, is that we take note on the law that there's protection for public health. It's not a, I don't think it's an amendment that will kill the law, but basically it's an amendment that will ask the ICT and the DOH to come up with Wi-Fi zones and put signages. That is the idea of the amendment, and not to stifle or slow down the idea of the law.
It's acceptable, Mr. President, for us, no? Because one, it provides signages, which is already in another provision. And secondly, it allows for the DOH to designate areas if in the future we find out that indeed there is harm. No? The DOH's official position, Mr. President, is that it's not harmful, by the way. But as Senator Zubiri said, this might change in the future. So this provision is there such that if there ever does come a time when the DOH changes its official position, at least it's ready, no, to designate safer areas.
Mr. President, I do not wish to delay the proceedings, but maybe we should, in suspension to look at the proposed amendment, the actual language,
Yes,
Mr. President.
And before I declare suspension, as I understood the amendment, we are not going to put a signage because it is a Wi-Fi area. The signage is near the equipment, as I understood
Yes,
it. Near
that's
the
correct, Mr.
I think you mentioned repeater,
Yes, it's
booster,
repeaters,
and
boosters.
a tower.
Yes.
So that's where the sign is to be placed, right?
That's correct, Mr. President.
So the people will not be warned that this is a Wi-Fi area because what's the point in warning them?
Opo,
Tama?
opo.
Tama po ba yan? Okay. So there's a motion to suspend. Any objection? There being none, we suspend for a few minutes.
sa'yo ba to?
Sir, aakit pa lang ako. Kasi siya, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'll withdraw.
We are ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. After discussion with the Majority Floor Leader and the Senate President Pro Tem, I'd like to make an amendment to my amendment, Mr. President. Or make it, I would withdraw
just withdraw the
I withdraw my
original
previous
amendment.
amendment, and I will do a new amendment. So it will read the Section 8, Protection of Public Health. The DOH, the DICT, and the telecommunications company shall ensure the protection of public health, period. Such facilities, such as relay stations, repeaters,
such facilities.
boosters, and telecommunication towers, shall bear warning signages that close and constant contact with such facilities may be harmful or hazardous to your health. May be harmful, or it's like a smoking cigarette, may be harmful to your health.
Mr. President, may we remove the first such?
With the permission of Senator Subiri. So it becomes
Start with
facilities such
facilities,
as,
yes.
Facilities such as
Okay.
relay stations, repeaters, boosters, and telecommunication towers.
so you accept
Subject to
the,
style, Mr. President.
subject to style.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? That's a new section 8, no?
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is approved.
Thank you very
Mr.
much,
Pre-
Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Zubiri. Mr. President, I have one last one, which is just a cleaning up amendment. On page 3, line 13, delete the word and replace it with or. Available or unassigned spectrum. Because all of the other references to this phrase, Mr. President, uses or.
Any,
So move.
any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, I think that's all for our, for my individual amendments
And
as
by-
well as the amendments of our colleagues, Mr. President.
And by agreement, since the Department of Information and Communications Technology has been mentioned in its long name, all subsequent mention would be the DICT.
Yes, Mr. President.
Together also with the National Telecommunications Commission,
Should be
the
NTC.
subsequent referral to the agency's NTC. That is
Yes, we can make an omnibus motion to that
omnibus
effect, Mr. President.
styling.
Subject to style, Mr.
yes,
President.
Omnibus styling motion. Thank you. Approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to close the period of individual amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, we close the said period.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill 1277 under Committee Report Number 19.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill number 1277 under Committee Report number 19 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, we would like to thank the Majority Floor Leader and the Senate President as well as our colleagues. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng tulong sa batas na ito.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of House Bill 4637 under Committee Report Number 43.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, this is the measure extending for another 25 years the franchise to Smart Communications. Parliamentary status of the measure is that we are in the period of Now, we have closed the period of interpellation, Mr. President. So I therefore move to open the period of committee amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
May I have a 1-minute suspension, Mr.
Minute
President?
suspension. Si Grace ano wala? Oh. Sa likod ah.
Hello. Yeah. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, move to recognize the chairman of the Committee on Public Services, Senator Grace Poe, for the committee amendments, if there are any.
Senator Poe is recognized.
Committee amendments?
Yes, there are a few, Mr. President.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Ito po yung babasahin, Mr. President.
Mr. President, our committee amendments are as follows. On page 2, line 2, delete the word co-use. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 13, delete the word co-use. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 15, insert a new section to read as follows. Section 2, Section 4 of Republic Act Number 7294 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 4. Responsibility to the public. The grantee shall conform to the ethics of honest enterprise and shall not use its stations for obscene or indecent transmissions or for the dissemination of deliberately false information or willful misrepresentation or assist in subversive or treasonable acts. The franchisee shall give priority to improving and extending its services in areas not yet served and in hazard and typhoon-prone areas that shall be determined by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council in coordination with the National Telecommunications Commission. The franchisee shall also improve and upgrade its equipment, facilities, and services in order to ensure effective compliance with the objectives of Republic Act Number 10639 or the Free Mobile Disaster Alerts Act. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 19, change the word approval to effectivity. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 5, line 5, change the word approval to effectivity. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 23, delete the phrase nor merge with any corporation or entity. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 6, line 4, apply the word apply, delete phrase A when transfer is done through a stock exchange.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 5, after the word exchange, delete the phrase B for purposes of qualifying persons for election to the board. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 9, after the word grantee, delete the phrase D to any transfer or issuance of shares of stock in the implementation of the requirement for the dispersal of the grantee's ownership consistent with Section 13 of Republic Act Number 7294. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 17, delete the phrase which shall result in the dilution of the stock holdings of the grantees, then existing stockholders. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 7, line 3, after the word thereunder, delete the phrase or of the merger or transfer of the controlling interest of the grantee. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Hence, the entire Section 11, taking into account the proper alphabetical order of the list in this section, shall now read, Section 11, sale, lease, transfer, usufruct, or assign the franchise. The grantee shall not sell, lease, transfer, grant the usufruct of, nor assign the franchise herein granted or the rights and privileges acquired thereunder to any person, firm, company, corporation, or other commercial or legal entity, nor shall transfer the controlling interest of the grantee, whether as a whole or in parts, and whether simultaneously or contemporaneously to any person, firm, company, corporation, or entity without the prior approval of the Congress of the Philippines, provided that the foregoing limitation shall not apply: A, when transfer is to a corporation that is controlled by the same stockholders controlling the grantee; B, to any transfer or sale of shares to a foreign investor or investors; C, to any issuance of shares to any foreign or local investors pursuant to or in connection with any increase in the grantee's authorized capital stock; D, to any transfer to another corporation which is a grantee of another congressional franchise for provision of telecommunications services; and E, to any combination thereof where such transfer, sale, or issuance is effected in order to enable the grantee to raise the necessary capital or financing for the provision of any of the services authorized by this act, and or to carry out any of the purposes for which the grantee has been incorporated or organized, provided further that any transfer, sale, or issuance is in accordance with any applicable constitutional limitation, provided furthermore that Congress shall be informed of any sale, lease, transfer, grant of usufruct, or assignment of franchise or the rights and privileges acquired thereunder within 60 days after the completion of the transaction, provided moreover that the failure to report to Congress the change of the ownership shall render the franchise ipso facto revoked, provided finally that any person or entity to which the franchise herein granted is validly sold, transferred, or assigned shall be subject to the same conditions, terms, restrictions, and limitations of this act. I so move.
That's the result now of the previous amendments.
Yes, Mr. President. I so
So, no,
move.
so noted, yes, so noted.
On the same page, line 18, after exchange, retain the phrase of the shares representing at least 30% of its authorized capital stock. I so move.
Retain, no, ma'am? Retain. Okay, any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 21, delete the phrase unless the grantee is wholly owned by a publicly listed company. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, starting from line 25 to 27, delete the phrase from section 16 equality and ending in the word or. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 8, delete lines 1 to 8 and replace it with the following. Section 16, equality clause. Any advantage, favor, privilege, exemption, or immunity granted under existing franchises or which may hereafter be granted upon prior review and approval of Congress shall become part of this franchise and shall be accorded immediately and unconditionally to the herein grantee, provided that the foregoing shall neither apply to nor affect provisions of telecommunications franchises concerning territory covered by the franchise, the lifespan of the franchise, or the type of the service authorized by the franchise. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
I move for an omnibus renumbering of the sections accordingly.
Yes, Secretariat, we should do that.
I shall be introducing individual amendments,
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Majority Leader?
President, I move to open the period of, move to close the period of committee amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, so closed.
I move to open the period of the individual amendments.
Any objection? We are now in the period for individual amendments.
May we recognize Senator Win Gatchalian, Mr. President.
Senator Gatchalian is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a very brief proposal and amendment. Before the equality clause, Section 6, mobile number portability. The grantee shall provide mobile number portability to all its subscribers. It shall set up a mechanism for the purpose of implementing MNP. It shall interconnect directly or indirectly with the infrastructure, facilities, systems, or equipment of other telecommunications franchise grantees. It shall not install network features, functions, or capabilities that will impede the implementation of a nationwide MNP system. The National Telecommunications Commission shall issue rules and regulations for this purpose, the effectivity of which shall commence upon applicability with other telecommunication franchise grantees. I so move, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to recognize the President Pro Tem, Senator Ralph Recto.
Senator Recto is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on Section 2, which proposes to amend Section 4 of Republic Act number 7294, on the second paragraph thereof, delete the phrase "give priority to improving and extending" and replace the same with the phrase "improve and extend."
I accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 7, line 7 of the House bill, after the word "of," insert the word "controlling."
I accept, Mr. President.
Controlling interest. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I move to recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and Majority Leader. To the good sponsor, may I propose individual amendment to page 7, lines 21 and 22 on 30% public offering requirement. So Section 13, listing of shares. It currently reads, the grantee shall list, subject to the requirements of the Securities and Exchange Commission and the stock exchange concerned, and make a public offering through the stock exchange of the shares representing at least 30% of its authorized capital stock in any securities exchange in the Philippines within 2 years from the effectivity of this act. I propose, Mr. President, a good sponsor, to add, should the grantee fail to do so within the period provided, this shall render the franchise ipso facto revoked. Noting, Mr. President and good sponsor, that similar ipso facto revocation is contained in Section 11 regarding transfer of ownership. I so move, Mr. President, good sponsor.
Mr. President.
Discussion?
Yes, Mr. President, if I may, with the permission of Senator Risa Ontiveros, this will run counter to my amendment, which basically restore the phrase from the House of Representatives, unless a grantee is wholly owned by a publicly listed company, at least 30% of whose authorized capital stock is publicly owned. So that will run counter my individual amendment, Mr. President.
Mr. President, perhaps we can hear the amendment of Senator Zubiri before we...
Yes. May I give the rationale, Mr. President? As chairman of the Committee on Franchises in the House of Representatives for 6 years, I had the opportunity as well to sponsor the NGCP franchise. There's a particular equality clause, and we all know that when a franchise is given a particular favorable or additional advantage, the succeeding franchises under our equality clause will also give them or grant them that particular advantage, Mr. President. And I recall during the amendment of the granting of the franchise for the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, under Section 8 of the law, we also granted them a telecommunications franchise. And under the telecommunications franchise of the NGCP franchise, we put there that the grantee shall list, subject to the requirements of the SEC and the PSC, to make public offering of shares representing at least 20% of its outstanding capital stock, or a higher percentage that may hereafter be provided by law within 10 years from the commencement of this operation, provided that the listing in the PSC of any company which is directly or indirectly owns or controls at least 30% of the outstanding shares of stock of the grantee shall be considered in full compliance of these listing requirements. In case compliance with this requirement is not reached, the ARC may, upon application of the grantee, after notice and hearing, shall allow the reasonable extension of this period within which the grantee shall list its shares of stock. So the key word there, Mr. President, provided that the listing of in the PSC of any company which is directly or indirectly owns or controls at least 30% of the outstanding shares of the stock of the grantee. So basically, if NGCP is owned by, for example, SM, which is a listed company, then it
no
is
need.
exempted from listing.
Okay.
So in this case, Mr. President, PLDT owns Smart. It's the mother corporation of Smart Corporation. And they are, actually, if not mistaken, in the SEC, and Senator Ralph can correct me, they are 50% owned by the public. It's one of the highest listings. It's a blue chip stock, Mr. President. And so, if you ask me, I personally feel that they've complied with this particular provision.
Mr. President,
If your amendment will be accepted,
Mr. President.
right?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, we were about to go there, to that particular issue. The minority leader reminded me of the previous ways of how we did individual amendments, especially with bills like this. We took it page by page so that we do not clash or any anterior amendments are left out. So what's happening now is is an offshoot of not following that particular style of the Senate before. But nevertheless, in the situation that we're in now, I think it is proper that the sponsor either accept or reject the amendment of Senator Hontiveros before Senator Zubiri can object. So, yes, we can clarify. Before after even if the sponsor accepts, as long as the presiding officer has not banged the gable and accepted it yet, it is still hanging, and you can clarify,
Yes.
you can object, you can...
When the chair says any objection, actually that includes any discussion.
Yes.
That's also included.
Well, yes, yes, but we don't know
Yes.
we do not know at this point the position of the sponsor.
That's correct.
So whether we will support the sponsor or not, or whether she will accept the amendment or not.
Yes.
So that is the reason we want that followed that procedure, Mr. President.
Senator Zubiri just gave us a preview that he is also going to amend the same section that is the subject of the...
All right, let's rewind, Mr. President. May we hear again the proposed amendment of Senator Hontiveros?
Gladly, Mr. President. And based on the points which I also raised to the good sponsor in interpellation about separate corporate personalities, in this case, separate corporate personalities of PLDT and of SMART, and also that the 30% requirement is contained in RA number 7925, which also contains the equality clause. I respectfully move, Mr. President, as an individual amendment that on page 7, in section 13, lines 21 and 22, that this be added. Should the grantee fail to do so within the period provided, this shall render the franchise ipso facto revoked. I so move, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
I am inclined not to accept it at this time because of the precedent franchise agreement also, which didn't have that clause. On the other hand, I would also like to hear the arguments of my colleagues regarding this matter.
So discussion, please. That's
Senator Recto, Mr. President.
Mr. President, my understanding of the amendment is such that one Smart should publicly list within 2 years, and if they don't list, automatically the franchise is revoked.
Ipso facto, Mr. President.
Ipso
yes.
facto. So what happens to the 60 million subscribers if they don't list? That is the question. That's one. Second, my understanding, the reason why Smart has not listed 30% is because they have a mother company, which is PLDT, one of the most widely listed companies in the country. 50% of their outstanding capital is listed in the stock exchange. Now, if, for example, we ask Smart to list, and if Smart contributes a huge amount of its revenues to PLDT, it is therefore possible that the stock price of PLDT will go down, and considering that the general public has invested in PLDT, and if I'm not mistaken, the market cap of Smart is roughly 300 billion. And if 50% is owned by the general public, that's another 150 billion. And if the revenues of PLDT comes from Smart, babagsak naman yung value ng PLDT. Now, in the case of Globe, I think when Ayala bought Globe, Globe was already publicly listed. And as far as the business model of Globe is concerned, it is both landline and wireless. Whereas in the case of Smart, Smart is purely wireless. And the other income stream of PLDT is from the landline. But the bigger revenues come from Smart. Now, having said all of that, Mr. President, and if in the last 25 years, Smart never listed, because their position has always been, since the mother company is already listed 50%, and the law says 30% lang dapat ilist nila, the SEC has not done anything anyway to force them to list. It would be implied, therefore, na tinanggap ng SEC yung argument ng Smart that the mother company is already listed. Now, so those are the 3 points I wanted to raise, just for the consideration of the body. That one, if you put that in the amendment, what is the implication? If they don't list within 2 years, the franchise is automatically revoked. What happens to the 60+ million subscribers? 2, their position is the mother company is publicly listed, widest publicly traded, 50% of its stock is traded, and the implication is that if they list, it's possible that the general public who invested in PLDT, babagsak naman yung share price. So that is the reasons, Mr. President, why I think that is not included in the measure. Thank you.
May I address the...
Yes.
Mr. President.
So, Madam Sponsor.
I tend to agree with Senator Ralph, also for these particular reasons. As he already mentioned, Smart, PLDT actually is 50% listed, even more than the requirement of 30%. Number 2, the SEC, when we had them here during the hearings, cannot even commit to a definite position on a penalty for not listing, because they see also the implication of this for the shareholders. Number 3, I think the concern mostly is transparency and compliance with reporting. Now, Smart, being owned by a publicly listed company, which is PLDT, has an independent auditor, which shareholders can request for their records without any impingement to it. It is actually available. The records are transparent, even as it is just a subsidiary of PLDT. So I think the main concern is that Smart has to be fully accountable, that the records are available to the investors, and PLDT is making that available, in fact.
Mr. President, may I also address the points raised by the good Senate President pro tempore?
Please do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the point about what would happen to the 60+ million subscribers, of course, I am presuming, Mr. President, that if this amendment should be accepted after we pass the renewal of Smart's franchise, that they will, in fact, accomplish within 2 years what they have not been able to accomplish in the first 25 years of their franchise, and preempt any possible inconvenience to their 60+ million subscribers. And still at the back of my mind is what they themselves said in hearing, or what PLDT itself said in hearing, that should the franchise not be passed in time, there would still be Digitel to fall back on, albeit, as the good sponsor said earlier, requiring additional efforts on Smart's part to yung saluhin yung subscribers nila in the interim. Secondly, Mr. President, on the mother company being publicly listed to the percentage of 50%, then that is admirable on the part of PLDT. It is a good example to Smart to comply at least with the minimum requirement of 30%, if not even to rise to the standard set by PLDT of 50%. And lastly, on the concern na baka bumagsak ang value ng shares ng PLDT at mapinsala naman tayo ang publiko na naka-invest dun sa mother company ng Smart. Well, I am not an expert on investing in the stock market, but I am certain, Mr. President, that the experts, both within Smart and PLDT itself, will not allow this to happen to one of the arguably best-run companies in the country, Mr. President.
Okay, so the situation is there is a proposed amendment not accepted by the sponsor?
Yes, it's not.
So,
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam Sponsor.
Mr. President, in fact, we've had the preview of Senator Zubiri's position, and I think this has also come to our attention that NGCP, that deals with a public utility, is not a publicly listed company, but it is owned by a publicly listed company, which is actually only 30% publicly listed. So in this case, if we use that as an example, then we can say that, in fact, Smart is exceeding the required 30%.
So that is a situation. If Senator Ontiveros will insist on her amendment, we will have to divide the House.
I am not insisting on my amendment, Mr. President. I will, as the good sponsor is, I am considering and will consider the arguments of the colleagues on the floor. And okay, then I will still submit my proposed amendments in writing as well, Mr. President. But I'm prepared to propose my last 5 proposed amendments.
Before
as
that,
individual
Mr. President,
amendments.
may I, before we move forward, Mr. President, just a quick manifestation that this representation would
Manifestation, go
also
ahead, sir.
like to associate himself to the points raised by Senator Risa Ontiveros, and I have raised my concern during the committee hearings, and just as the good Senator Risa is no longer pursuing her amendments, I also join the good senator. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva.
I'm not insisting on the amendment, Mr.
Okay.
President, if the good sponsor
Yes.
will not accept
Mr.
it.
President, if I may, we are retaining the original wording of of Section 13. So it's really up to the SEC to be able to impose this if they want.
We deleted the phrase unless the grantee is wholly owned by a publicly listed company. Is that correct, Madam Smart? Yes, we deleted that.
Yes, we did.
Yes. So if Senator Ontiveros will categorically state that she's withdrawing her proposed amendment.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, so
If
you-
the good sponsor does not accept my proposed amendment, I withdraw it,
Okay,
Mr.
so you
President.
continue-
I'll
continue,
continue
ma'am.
to propose a few
Continue,
more
ma'am. Yes,
amendments, Mr. President. Thank
You have the floor.
Mr. President. Moving on now to a proposed amendment on the infrastructure development plan. This would be a new section, amending Section 16, reportorial requirement of RA number 7924. So it reads right now, Mr. President, the grantee shall submit an annual report to the Congress of the Philippines on its compliance with the terms and conditions of the franchise and on its operations. And then add, as well as an infrastructure expansion and development plan for the next 12 months, comma, within 60 days from the end of every year. Noting also, Mr. President, that this reportorial requirement is already found in RA 7294. I so move, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'm sorry, but I will not accept also that amendment simply because, number one, other franchises do not have this provision. Number two, with the new deal that they have acquiring more bandwidth, they need to be able to submit a report of their development plan to the NTC. And I feel that this is of the area of concern of the NTC, which is also accountable to us with our oversight function.
In which case, Mr. President, if the good sponsor will not accept my proposed amendment, I withdraw it. Moving on to a proposed amendment, Mr. President, on the equality clause. On page 7, lines 23 to 27, and page 8, lines 1 to 8. I respectfully propose, Mr. President, an amendment completely deleting this clause for being redundant, as the good sponsor herself also said in interpellation. And noting further, Mr. President, that the same provision is already found in Section 23 of RA number 7925. I so move, Mr. President.
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
A minute suspension.
Um,
Sir, anong sasabihin ko ngayon? Accept mo.
Okay na. Iwan na lang doon. It was already proposed. It should have been during our committee. And it's also with other telcos. Mr. President, ready to resume.
Okay, session is resumed.
Mr. President, I don't mean to be difficult. It's just that this is already in the law. And then other telecom franchises also have this provision. Therefore, I think that it doesn't really harm anything to just keep it there. It's not in conflict with any law. It just reinforces it.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the good sponsor will not accept my last amendment, proposed amendment for today, I withdraw it. And may I just put on record a request regarding foreign ownership. Mr. President, could we request that SMART forward to Congress a report on the ultimate beneficial ownership of the following foreign companies: La Rouge BV, a Dutch company; Intalink BV, another Dutch company; Metro Pacific Investments Limited, a company registered in the Cayman Islands; First Pacific International Limited, a Hong Kong company, and First Pacific Enterprise Holdings BV, another Hong Kong company. Thank you very much, Mr. President, Majority Leader, and to the good sponsor, with whom I never feel she is being difficult, and whom I thank for her forbearance also with my interpellation and proposed amendments, and with whom, Mr. President, I continue to look forward to working with on improving our regulatory environment for public utilities as one of the
There's a
very
request.
important goods we want to deliver to our people.
Madam
Thank you,
Sponsor, there's
Mr.
a
President.
request from Smart Telecom.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the good senator from Capiz for, number one, her diligence and her continued trust. I also look forward to working with her for the good of our consumers. With regard to the request, I would respectfully suggest that perhaps the senator can file a resolution so that we can hear this on a separate matter with regards to the ownership of Smart and all the other foreign investors.
Will do, Mr. President.
But it's a
Thank you very
simple
much.
request for information. Cannot Smart give us that?
Well, Smart can give us that.
Yes. And then the
but it's
resolution
not
will
part
also
of
be
this,
filed. But
franchise,
can we request for that information? What's the response?
We will write, through my committee, I will formally write them a letter regarding this,
Thank you.
in
Thank
reference
you.
to the request of the good senator.
Thank you very much, Madam Sponsor, and thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Mr. President.
Mr.
Majority
President, may
Leader.
we recognize Senator Joel Villanueva for the continuation of a period of individual amendments.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Majority
Senator
Floor Leader.
Villanueva,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. President. Again, just to be consistent with our stand, may I propose an individual amendment on Section 10, line 20. After the word effect, insert a colon followed by the following words. Provided that all pending suits of whatever kind of nature, whether civil, criminal, or administrative, filed by or against the grantee in connection with the provisions of Republic Act Number 7924 shall continue to be prosecuted under the said law, provided further that all liabilities, fines, penalties, surcharges, and/or unpaid tax assessments of the grantee from March 27, 1992 until the effectivity of this new law shall remain valid and enforceable under Republic Act Number 7924. Thus, Mr. President, the new Section 10 shall read as follows.
On page 8, no? That's the Section 10 on page 8.
Yes, Mr. President.
Applicability clause.
Yes, applicability clause. All other provisions of Republic Act Number 7924, which are not inconsistent, 7294, sorry, Mr. President, which are not inconsistent with the provisions of this act and remain repealed, shall continue to be in full force and effect. Unrepealed, provided that all pending suits of whatever kind or nature, whether civil, criminal, or administrative, filed by or against the grantee in connection with the provisions of Republic Act Number 7924, shall continue to be prosecuted under the said law, provided further that all liabilities, fines, penalties, surcharges, and/or unpaid tax assessments of the grantee from March 27, 1992 until the effectivity of this new law shall remain valid and enforceable under Republic Act Number 7924. Mr. President, 7294.
7294, okay.
Mr. President, this amendment is proposed in light of our debate last time, Mr. President, of the unpaid local taxes of Smart amounting to 243.4 million as reported during the last hearing by the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines. And so this representation is proposing this amendment.
Mr. President, an obligation is an obligation, and I thank the senator for raising the concerns of our local government, and so I accept this amendment.
Thank you, Madam Sponsor. Thank you, Mr. President. One last.
May we know what's the date? Your amendment has a date. What is the significance of that date? March, you said.
The date of the Republic Act 7294.
So you mentioned the date of that.
Yes,
So,
Mr.
okay, so any objection? The amendment, the proposed amendment has been accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
One last, Mr. President, on page 7, add the section after line 22, which read as follows, and again, just being consistent with our advocacy. Section 7, a new section is hereby inserted after Section 13 of Republic Act Number 7924 to read as follows. Section 14, compliance with labor standards. The grantee, its success, or assigned shall comply with the applicable labor standards under existing labor laws, rules and regulations, and such other issuances as may be promulgated by the Department of Labor and Employment, taking into consideration the nature and peculiarities of the telecommunications industry. Renumbering the sections accordingly, I so move, Mr. President.
Yes, I accept, Mr. President, but may we use the word assignee, not assigns?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any objection?
I agree.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved. Are you
I'm done, Mr.
done?
President. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Sponsor.
Majority Leader, Senator Subiri wants to be recognized. Okay, Senator
Senator
Subiri
Subiri,
is
sir.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in line with the equality clause of the franchises given to our applicants, I would like to, on page 7, line 21, restore the phrase, unless the grantee is wholly owned by a publicly listed company with at least 30% of whose authorized capital stock is publicly owned. I so move, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
Then, Mr. President, just for the record, Senator Alan Cayetano had spoken to me and Senator Joel. Unfortunately, he's not here today. But he was just asking about the taxes paid, the local taxes paid by telecommunications franchise, whether Globe or Smart. May we ask the good sponsor, I know this is not period of interpellation, but just for the record, to satisfy the good gentleman from Taguig, whose wife happens to be a mayor, to find out the local taxes paid by telecommunications companies, particularly Smart.
For the record, Mr. President, to clarify the concern also of our colleague, the taxes being paid by Smart are as follows to the local government: mayor's permit, business permit. Real property taxes, that does not include the housing of equipment. So that's mostly, that's actually more, and more than franchise taxes. So to take all those in consideration, they've actually paid quite a bit. In 2016, in real property taxes, 225,319,8.09. That's just an example of the taxes they paid in real property taxes. Mayor's permit, 66,295,390.27, and franchise tax, 26,495,664. And this is on top of the other corporate income tax, dock stamps, value-added tax, etc., etc.
So for the record, Mr. President, they're not local tax exempt.
No.
They still pay taxes.
We actually have submitted a copy of this to the office of Senator Cayetano.
So thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to the sponsor.
Just to clarify, Mr. President, only
Senator
the
Villanueva.
local franchise tax, Mr. President, they're exempted only for local franchise tax. Am I correct, distinguished colleague?
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you, under this new franchise. Thank you very
Local
much.
franchise. Majority Leader.
We have one more individual amendment to be proposed, but it is not available today, Mr. President, so we will have to suspend consideration of the bill and take it up tomorrow. So I move to suspend consideration of House Bill 4637.
Any objection? Hearing none, we suspend consideration of House Bill number 4637.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And we,
With the permission of the body, Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1304 under Committee Report 28.
any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, this is the proposed measure on free higher education for all. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we're now in the period of interpellation, still in the period of interpellation, so I move to recognize the sponsor, Chairman of the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture, Senator Bam Aquino, and to interpolate Senator Ralph Recto, the President Pro Tem.
Senator Aquino, sponsor, and Senator Recto are recognized.
Mr. President, we have an agreement with the sponsor that I will no longer interpolate but propose individual amendments.
Mr. President, in that case, I move to end the period of interpellation.
Any objection? Hearing none, we end the period for interpellation for this measure.
Move to open the period of committee amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
There are no committee amendments, Mr. President. I move to close the period of committee amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
I move to open the period of individual amendments.
Any objection? Oh, we are now in the period for individual amendments.
I move that we recognize now the President Pro Tem, Senator Ralph Recto, Mr. President.
Senator Recto is recognized to introduce individual amendments.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. On page 1, line 3, after the word that, delete the words accessible and replace with the words universal access to.
I accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Again on page 1, on line 5, after the words accessible to, add the words all, comma, especially to thee.
I accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 6, after the word students, add the phrase, by recognizing the complementary roles of public and private higher education institutions, open close parenthesis, HEIs, and technical vocational institutions, open close TVIs, in delivering quality education.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 7, after the word providing, delete the words free higher education for,
We accept, Mr. President.
and replace with tuition subsidy and financial assistance to.
We accept, Mr. President.
Okay, that's one amendment. Any
Yes.
objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 8, after the initials SUCs, add a comma and add the words private HEIs and TVIs.
We accept, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none, approved.
Page 2. On page 2, line 33, delete the words his/her.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Approved.
On line 45, delete the word and.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 1, re-letter sub-item B as sub-item C and add a new sub-item B to read as follows. Students who fail to complete their degree and or non-degree programs within a year after the period prescribed in their program end.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Page 4, on page 4, line 4, delete the phrase oversight committees in both houses of Congress and replace with the phrase to the Committee on Education of the Senate and the Committee on Higher Education or Committee on Higher and Technical Education of the House of Representatives.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same page, line 25, after the word students, delete the preposition in.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On the same line, after the word SUCs, add the words and private HEIs and TVIs.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On line 26, remove the phrase moreover STUFAP programs and replace with the acronym STUFAPs.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Between lines 28 and 29, insert a new section 12 to read as follows. Section 12, tuition subsidy and financial assistance for students in private HEIs and TVIs. Students who wish to enroll in private HEIs and TVIs shall be covered by the appropriate STUFAPs in such modalities where they qualify, as may be determined by the UNIFAS Board. The subsidy up to the amount approved by the UNIFAS board shall cover tuition fees and/or any additional student financial assistance to cover for the other costs of education in the private HEI and TVI of choice, subject to its admission policies, provided that the amount of tuition subsidy and/or student financial assistance shall be based on the guidelines set forth by the UNIFAS board and on the annual budgetary appropriation for this purpose, provided further that the conditions stipulated under Section 5 of this Act shall also apply to students qualified under this section.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
And of course, renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. On the same page 4, on lines 29 to 32, delete the phrase of 15 billion pesos is hereby initially appropriated from the Presidential Social Fund for the SUC Tuition Subsidy Fund and to implement the provisions of this Act. Thereafter, such amount necessary to effectively carry out the provisions of this Act, and replaced with the phrase necessary to effectively carry out the provisions of this Act.
We accept, Mr. President.
That shall be included in the Annual General Appropriations Act. That's the effect. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Okay. On page 1, line 1, this is on the short title. Delete the word free and replace with the word affordable, which makes the short title as Affordable Higher Education for All Act.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
And finally, change the long title to read as follows. An act accelerating universal access to tertiary education by providing for a tuition subsidy and financial assistance to students enrolled in state universities and colleges, private higher education institutions, and technical vocational institutions, and appropriating funds therefore.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Thank you, Mr. President.
We thank the Senate President Pro Tempore for all of his suggestions and improvements to the bill. Maraming salamat, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Senator Lacson will propose individual amendments, Mr. President. I move to recognize
Senator Lacson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the distinguished sponsor will care to accept the following amendment.
We shall, Mr. President.
On page 2, lines 34 to 31, instead of introducing amendments partially, may I just read into the record the new wordings of the entire paragraph?
Yes, Mr.
Under
President.
Section 4. Eligibility to the full tuition subsidy. All Filipino citizens who are currently enrolled at the time of the effectivity of this Act, or shall enroll at any time thereafter in courses in pursuance of a bachelor's degree or certificate degree in any SUC shall qualify for a full tuition subsidy, provided that they pass a qualifying examination to be prescribed by CHED and meet the admission and retention standards of the SUC. Provided further that the SUC shall prioritize the admission of underprivileged but deserving students. Provided finally that all SUC shall create a mechanism to enable students with financial capacity to pay for their education in the SUC to opt out of the tuition subsidy or to make a donation to the school.
We accept, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And my last
any
amendment
objection? Hearing none, approved.
is on page 4, line 29. Delete the whole section and in lieu thereof, substitute the following to read Section 12, Appropriations. The initial appropriations necessary for this Act shall be charged to the appropriation of the Commission on Higher Education, period. Thereafter, the amount necessary for the funding of the program shall be included in the Annual General Appropriations Act.
Mr. President, before I accept it, can I suspend for a second?
We have a situation where we are amending a recently amended section. So session is suspended.
Okay then? Hindi kasi
Subject to style, Mr. President.
okay, because the explanation is if we rely on the SPF, suspended.
Yeah.
Hindi pala SPF.
Session is resumed. Hindi. Ano na eh. Hindi naman siya second eh.
Mr. President, have we resumed?
Yes, we are resumed. The amendment of Senator Lacson refers to a section just recently amended. So
By Senator Recto.
By
But
Senator
Mr.
Recto.
President, there is no conflict within the two sections, so we're inclined to accept the amendment of Senator Lacson.
Thank you, Mr.
With the
President.
permission of Senator Recto.
any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is approved subject to style.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was my last amendment. I would just like to make a manifestation that the amendment in Section 4 is a joint amendment with Senator Gordon.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority
May we
Leader.
now recognize Senator Gordon, Mr. President, for his individual amendments.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the Honorable Chairman, the Honorable Sponsor, I'd like to propose some amendments. On page 3, lines number 24 to 28, the provision to be amended is Section 8. Requirements for SUCs are hereby mandated to fulfill the following before accessing the fund. A, establish a qualifying mechanism which shall be meritocratic and equitable. This shall include but not limited to a qualifying examination and an affirmative action mechanism for financially disadvantaged students. We would like to propose the amendment change financially disadvantaged students to underprivileged but deserving students. So that Section 8 would read, establish a qualifying mechanism which shall be meritocratic and equitable. This shall include but not limited to a qualifying examination and an affirmative action mechanism for underprivileged but deserving students.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
And then on page 4, Section 8, lines 8 to 11, Section 8, requirements for SUCs. And I quote, "The submissions to CHED shall be subject to the Commission's determination of completeness, provided that CHED shall have the right to request for additional information from the SUCs, provided that any plans of expansion shall be approved and defended before CHED and Congress during the SUC's budget hearing." We propose to insert a new paragraph so that it would read, actually, I think this is the one covered by Senator Lacson, Reverend? Just say-
Some parts have been
Yeah,
covered
okay.
by Senator Lacson.
But I will reiterate, the amendment should be for this purpose. The term underprivileged students shall refer to individuals whose combined household income falls within the poverty threshold as defined by the National Economic Development Authority. I understand that the sponsor has problems with the word underprivileged.
Mr. President, the problem is falls within the poverty threshold because if you fall under the poverty threshold, you are considered poor, and the definition of poor with NEDA, Mr. President, is quite low. It's quite low, Mr. President, and in our interpolations, we have already accepted that our subsidy will cover poor and near poor students. So we're afraid that we might be excluding the near poor.
Yeah, which means that they want to study, but they don't have the sufficient means, right?
Yes, Mr. President.
And so perhaps, maybe for this purpose, we should say the term underprivileged students shall refer to individuals whose combined household income shall fall within a threshold amount to be determined by NEDA with CHED.
We accept, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none, approved.
And finally, again, page 4, lines number 4 to 7, section 8, requirements for SUCs. Formulate and submit to CHED and oversight committees in both houses. This is under section D, of course, subsection D. A detailed SUC development plan updated every 10 years, which shall include plans for facilities and infrastructure development and expansion. We would like to insert a new provision. So they would read section 8, requirements for SUCs, and D will now be replaced with determine a grade requirement and establish a monitoring mechanism in maintaining the tuition subsidy so that students will remain competitive, Mr. President.
We accept, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
And finally, Mr. President, section, page 3, section 4 to 8, lines number 4 to 8, is the matter of SUC tuition subsidy fund. The SUC tuition subsidy fund, hereinafter referred to as a fund, is hereby established. The fund shall be used solely for the purpose of implementing the full tuition subsidy under the provisions of this Act. Tuition for units enrolled by persons eligible for the tuition subsidy under the provisions of this Act payable to SUC shall be sourced from this fund. We would like to include, Mr. President, local universities and colleges, in other words, city universities and colleges as well, and public technical vocational institutes, or TVIs, in the tuition subsidy, so that it would read, SUC Tuition Subsidy Fund. The SUC Tuition Subsidy Fund, hereinafter referred to as the fund, is hereby established. And the amendment shall say, the CHED shall also allocate portion of the fund to subsidize tuition of students in local universities and colleges, LUCs, and public technical vocational institutes. Mr. President.
We accept, Mr. President. And to clarify, Mr. President, the end of the section will continue. The fund shall be used solely for the purpose of implementing the full tuition subsidy under the provisions of this Act. Tuition for units enrolled by persons eligible for the tuition subsidy under the provisions of this Act payable to SUCs shall be sourced from this fund. So just to clarify, Mr. President.
And to further clarify, the purpose of the amendment is to include not just SUCCs, but also city-run universities.
Mr.
and
President.
runs. Just to clarify,
Yes.
in case the Supreme Court may want to look out the debates.
Yes, Mr. President. We agree, Mr. President.
Okay, any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you very much, and I thank the sponsor for his kindness in accepting.
We thank the gentleman from Zambales for all of his for his interpolation, firstly, and secondly, for these amendments which truly improve the bill. Thank you, sir. Mr. President, may I have a 1-minute suspension?
Session is suspended.
expand the SUCs lang yan eh. Expand lahat.
Let's do this. Senator Tito?
Sure, baka si
Deserving and determined.
Sir, yan na.
Yes.
Ready to resume, Mr.
Session
President.
is resumed.
Mr. President, before we...
Minute suspension?
No, Mr. President, it's directed to the Secretariat. Before I move to recognize the next senator who wishes to introduce individual amendments, may I just call the attention of the Secretariat on this Section 6. We need not do it now, but I suggest that you look at it subject to style. The use of the word fund has been repetitive, Mr. President. Perhaps the last line should read, shall be sourced from the same. Something to that effect. So subject to style, we'll just ask the Secretariat to look into this. Anyway, Mr. President, I move to recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros for her individual amendments. In the meantime, 1 minute suspension.
Minute suspension. Oo nga. Session is resumed. Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to the good sponsor, I just have one proposed amendment. On page 3, the new section 8 on requirements for SUCs. Letter A, lines 26 to 28. It reads, establishing a qualifying mechanism, then add the words for admission, and then continue as written now, which shall be meritocratic and equitable. This shall include but not be limited to a qualifying examination and an affirmative action mechanism for financially, this part has been amended.
This is now for underprivileged but deserving students.
Underprivileged but deserving students. And then further propose, Mr. President, to add the phrase, provided that the qualifying examination and all other requirements to be fulfilled to qualify for admission under said qualifying mechanism shall be free of charge to persons eligible for the tuition So,
Subsidy.
hindi na po itong and other school fee subsidy. For the tuition
Subsidy.
subsidy, under the provisions of this act, and the payment of the costs thereof shall be sourced from the fund. I so move, Mr. President.
We accept, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, good
Any
sponsor.
objection? Shall that be subject to style?
Yes, Mr.
If we
President.
can compress the idea? Okay. Amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The sponsor wishes to propose an individual amendment.
Senator Aquino.
Thank you. Mr. President, just a few more to clean up the bill further. On page 1, line 20, insert a new subparagraph E, which shall read, E, local universities and colleges, LUCs, refer to a public higher education institution established by a local government unit through an enabling ordinance and financially supported by the concerned local government unit. So move, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 1, line 20, before the phrase other school fees, insert the phrase miscellaneous end. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 2, line 1, delete subparagraph G.
Delete subparagraph G. Is that's the motion?
Yes, Mr. President. We don't use the term Mr. President.
Okay. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 2, line 29, after the phrase creative works, insert the word end.
And
So move, Mr. President.
any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 2, line 33, replace the semicolon with a period.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, we'll just move to renumber all subparagraphs accordingly later.
Secretariat is directed to be conscious of the need to renumber or reletter the paragraphs.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 2, after line 41, insert a new paragraph which shall read, SUCs shall be prohibited from charging any fees to students other than miscellaneous and other school fees.
Okay. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 4, on the title of the section, delete the word SUC before the phrase tuition subsidy fund. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 4, delete the word SUC after the word the in the body of section 6. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 13, insert a new subparagraph B, which shall read as follows. B, regulate and approve miscellaneous and other fees being charged by the SUCs. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 26, delete the phrase a qualifying mechanism and replace with the phrase an admission and retention standard. So move, Mr. President.
Okay. Subject to style because this has been amended by the
Yes, Mr. President.
Hontiveros amendments. Okay. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 29, insert subparagraph B and replace with the new subparagraph, on page 3, line 29, delete subparagraph B and replace with the new subparagraph B, which shall read as follows. B, in order to facilitate the tracking of students and their performance, adopt the learner information system established by the Department of Education in accordance with guidelines to be developed by CHED. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 3, line 36, delete subparagraph C and replace with the new subparagraph C, which shall read as follows. C, submit relevant information as determined by CHED on school quality and performance to assist the Commission in implementing this act, end. So moved, Mr. President.
So you're simplifying paragraph C.
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 4, line 11, after the last sentence, add the sentence provided finally that submissions from SUCs shall be verified by a third-party auditor accredited by the CHED.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Senator Recto, Mr. President, wishes to pose a question on that last amendment.
Just a clarification.
Senator Recto.
Who could that third-party auditor be?
Mr. President, we assume that CHED can decide to accredit any type of auditors. The idea here, Mr. President, is that we want the data to be submitted to be verified further. But if you have a counter suggestion, Mr. President, we'd be happy to accept
I
it.
would suggest that CHED do its work, and it would be difficult to get third-party auditors. It's like, will you allow the BIR to have a third-party auditor, or for example, in the case of COA?
Mr. President, I'm happy to withdraw this, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. President, I withdraw that, proposed amendment.
We will consider the approval of the amendment.
Yes.
Majority Leader. Okay, any objection? Hearing none, the approval has been reconsidered.
The sponsor has moved to withdraw.
Okay, so just to be very clear,
That amendment, Mr. President, provided finally that submissions from SUC
Yes.
shall be verified by a third-party auditor accredited by the CHED is withdrawn.
yes, withdrawn, not pursued. Thank you.
Mr. President, on page 4, line 12, insert a new section 9, which will read as follows. Section 9, maximum number of students. For the initial implementation of this act, the maximum number of students that SUCs may accept shall be equivalent to the total number of students that were enrolled in the school year prior to the effectivity of this act. For subsequent years, SUCs may seek approval from CHED to increase the number of students that they may accept, subject to conditions and requirements to be set by the Commission. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved. Dwin.
Mr. President, may I suspend for a minute,
Session
just to
suspended.
finalize?
Session suspended. Di ba?
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, that's all for my individual amendments. And I think no other senator, Mr. President, wishes to provide individual amendments.
I move to terminate the period of individual amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, we close the period for individual amendments.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill 1304 under Committee Report Number 28, subject to style.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill number 1304 under Committee Report number 28 is approved on second reading, subject to style.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1311 under Committee Report Number 33.
Can I ask for a minute suspension so Senator Recto can take my place here? Session is suspended.
Tatawag natin siya.
Wala pa na. Wala mo na.
Ang yes? Hindi. No? Oh, yan, ikaw na. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, this is the measure on national policy on ease of doing business. Parliamentary status of the measure is that we are now in the period of interpellation, so I move to recognize the sponsor of the measure, Chairman of the Committee on Cooperatives, Senator Migs Zubiri, and to interpellate Senator Lacson, Mr. President.
The chairman of the Committee on Cooperatives, the gentleman from Bukidnon, is recognized. Senator
Mr.
Subiri.
Mr. President, let me amend my motion. Senator Villanueva will interpolate first before Senator Lacson.
Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Will the distinguished sponsor of Senate Bill 1311 yield to some questions from this representation?
I would be honored to, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. President, at the onset, may I just commend and thank the good sponsor for his efforts on keeping in the public consciousness the persistent problem of bureaucratic and regulatory inefficiencies and how it stems into a poor business environment. This issue had been a serious problem for several decades already, and there have been several policy and administrative attempts to address this issue, and we understand the frustration of the good sponsor on why this problem continues to persist despite our efforts. Mr. President, for the record, and I cannot help but see the parallels between this proposed measure and the Anti-Red Tape Act of 2007, sponsored by this representation when we were still in the House of Representatives, and sponsored by the distinguished Senator Panfilo Lacson here in the Senate not too long ago, more than a decade ago, Mr. President. Both Republic Act 9485 or the ARTA, Anti-Red Tape Act, and Senate Bill 1311 have similar intentions of improving the efficiency of service delivery by government offices. When we enacted, Mr. President, the Anti-Red Tape Act, we intended, among others, for a comprehensive reform on the systems and procedures for the delivery of all frontline services in the government offices and agencies covered by the law. This, Mr. President, include national agencies and local governments, GOCCs, even SUCs, local schools, and local hospitals. From our understanding, Mr. President, the ease of doing business bill, this measure intends to focus on a particular type of government service or transaction, which is the issuance and renewal of licenses, clearance and or permits for business applications. One of the truly laudable efforts, Mr. President, of this proposed measure is that it seeks to streamline the procedures of business applications towards a unified structure. This is a feature that we could hope to have incorporated in the then anti-red tape law that we sponsored. However, given the wide range of services covered by the law, we understand that a unified structure of procedure for all frontline services in the bureaucracy may be conceptually and administratively undesirable, if not unsound. Mr. President, my first question is the intention of this particular bill. Would the sponsor enlighten us on the status of the implementation of the Anti-Red Tape Act and what it intends to address that is not being addressed or perhaps may kulang pa para ma-improve natin itong hindi lang yung laban natin sa corruption, Mr. President, but also in promoting good business atmosphere and at the same time creating more jobs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, when we had marathon hearings on this Ease of Doing Business Act, we had a total of about 5 or 6 hearings, and the complaint of, including several technical working group meetings, the complaint really of businessmen, Your Honor, Mr. President, is that it is unfortunate, but the Anti-Red Tape Act is not being implemented to the fullest. Their number one complaints are really delays in their requirements and licensing, all the permits that are being required. And their complaint is that the Anti-Red Tape Act is not being implemented in these particular agencies. It's been approved as Republic Act 9485 since 2007. And the act was passed in response to urgent need to establish an effective system that will eliminate bureaucratic red tape. Unfortunately, it has not happened, maybe because of the size of the or the expanse of government bureaucracy. Kasi under the Anti-Red Tape Act, it covers all government transactions. There's no distinction between business or related personal transactions. So even a simple request for information from an agency, which is also covered by ARTA, is part of the Anti-Red Tape law. Unlike with the ease of doing business, Your Honor, Mr. President, we're focused on business transactions. We're focused on business permits, mayor's permit, construction permit. We're focused on national government agencies like, for example, in the case of power, you have the DOE requirements. There's DNR requirements, the requirements from the Department of Health. So these are specific to business transactions, Your Honor. And it is more, I guess, if you listen to my speech when I gave the opening, sponsorship speech for the measure, we showed that really the Philippines is lagging behind our ASEAN neighbors in competitiveness. And the number one complaint really was the bureaucratic red tape. So we're addressing it now with this particular bill on ease of doing business. Mr. President.
Thank you, good sponsor. Mr. President, may I also ask if during the hearing, the chair encountered some lessons learned by the Civil Service Commission from the implementation of the Anti-Red Tape Act. As I recall, when you talk about the Anti-Red Tape Act, they are supposed to monitor the Citizens Charter, which covers step-by-step procedure to obtain services of given public offices. And this covers pertinent information, Mr. President. Example, the frontline services, fees, personnel in charge, etc. And looking at the proposed measure, the ease of doing business, you are proposing a comprehensive checklist which covers step-by-step procedure for issuance of license, clearance, and permits. Perhaps I would also like to pause, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, if the sponsor would know how many government agencies and offices do not have still a published citizens charter.
Well, majority, according to the staff from the DTI and some of the agencies that are with us today and during the hearings, several naman have been compliant. There are certain agencies, though, that fail on that, and that's why during the report card, per se, there's a report card given by the National Competitiveness Council. Some have failed. And many of these agencies, namumunga po yung listahan nila kung... Tama ba yung sinabi ko? Bisaya ako eh. Nanganganak, namumunga ng... Dumadami. Na pag mayroon silang 1 to 10 requirements, due to whatever, especially pertaining to business, nadadagdagan. So hindi nila na papatupad yung Citizens Charter wherein you're supposed to put the checklist, no, nothing more, nothing less from the checklist. So under our provision, under our proposal in the ease of doing business, particularly for business transactions, we have mandated that the licensing agency, for example, for business permits in the local governments, nakalagay talaga yung listahan, A to Z, ika nga, of the requirements, and it must be the final list published in the internet webpage as well as in the areas of doing business. Ang kagandahan yan, Mr. President, is hindi na manganganak itong mga requirements na ito because pag nanganganak, usually that is cause for concern. Diyan ka nagkakaroon ng lagayan or yung pakiusap, ika nga, para hindi na hihingin itong mga requirements na ito. So, but these are mostly for business transaction permits, mga permits for business.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished colleague. And may I just put on record, when we talk about the Citizens Charter, it requires each office to post relevant information regarding the frontline services. Among others, this includes step-by-step procedures, personnel responsible for each step, maximum time to conclude the process, documents to be presented by the client, amount of fees to be paid if necessary, procedure for filing complaints. I wonder, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, if during the course of the hearing, if we actually got some information on whether or not the clients of frontline services notice these mandatory postings. And perhaps in this particular measure that we are deliberating upon, we require the agencies or the implementing agency to ensure that this will be posted dun sa talagang makikita ng mga kliyente, Mr. President. One of the key features, Mr. President, of RA 9485 is it requires the use of a report card survey, Mr. President.
Yes.
This serves as a systematic and quantitative public feedback mechanism to gauge the quality of frontline services in the government offices. It is also a way for us to monitor if the offices are complying with specific provisions of the Anti-Red Tape Act, such as, again, posting of citizens' charter, prohibition of hidden costs, no lunch breaks, etc. May we know from the good sponsor how this is being implemented, and will this be part of the measure that you are espousing, Mr. President?
Well, under the Anti-Red Tape Act, the Civil Service Commission, in coordination with the Development Academy of the Philippines, they conduct an annual report card survey. Unfortunately, it's a limited number of agencies lang. For example, BIR, GSIS, Pag-ibig, LRA, LTO, PhilHealth, PRC, PSA, Land Bank, SSS. So, this is for 2015. And I'm not sure if they go all the way down to the local government units. But so far for 2015, it's only online services of 9 government agencies.
That's a good
In
point.
2016, they
a
added
good
10 agencies, or rather, it was 10 agencies, and some state universities and colleges, a few local water districts. Pero meron po silang naigawa, pero hindi talaga nakakayanan ng Civil Service Commission. Yung number one complaint nila, Mr. President, is napakalaki, napakalawak.
Too broad.
It's too broad, hindi nila nakayanan. Just because the government bureaucracy is just humongous, it's just huge. And imagine, I already named 9 agencies, and that alone would probably take up so much manpower and time by the civil service. So, under our under our proposal, we created a commission, the Ease of Doing Business Commission. But we're amending the measure under the suggestion of Senator Ralph Recto that we just put an office under the Department of Trade and Industry. So, in the proper time, the committee will make amendments that this office under the Department of Trade and Industry, that will be their job, to take over, but only for business transactions, Your Honor. So kasi it's not the mandate of this law to check, let's say, license in the LTO or PhilHealth, how do you say, the PhilHealth registrations or how well they do in the SSS. Wala na po sa coverage ng law na ito. It's only for business transactions.
I share the sentiment of the distinguished sponsor, and I have here with me the table of the survey that the good sponsor was mentioning a while ago. And if you look at the survey, there are only about 11 agencies that were covered. But at least in all these agencies, it's only 1.35% when you look at the failing grade that they got, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, what services will be included in the proposed comprehensive checklist that are not currently covered by the Citizens Charter under the Anti-Red Tape Act?
It's actually, we're pushing for the transparency procedures. So this is in a way similar to the Citizens Charter that requires posting for the client's information. Under the Ease of Doing Business, Mr. President, the Act is meant to complement and fortify the ARTA, the Anti-Red Tape Act. And the Ease of Doing Business is proposing a uniform comprehensive checklist of requirements. So for instance, a local government unit shall have a uniform checklist of requirements for the same permit being issued on the same business. No? Agencies issuing import-export clearances, for example, shall have the same set of requirements being issued across regions. Para yan ang trabaho ng ease of doing business. So for example, import-export with the Bureau of Customs, we'll make sure that the Bureau of Customs regional office, let's say Region 6 or Bureau of Customs region in Davao, should have the same checklist. Hindi po, again, mamumunga at manganganak ng dagdag. So innovation then, part of the innovation with this ease of doing business is online posting of these checklists and requirements.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with the sentiments of the good sponsor. And again, I'd like to put on record that I'm in full support of this measure. However, we wanted to make sure that this will not overlap or mapababa yung pong ginagawa natin or yung successes na tinatamasa nito pong Anti-Red Tape Act. Mr. President, as earlier mentioned, both measures provide prescribed period of time for offices, agencies to act upon a request. However, looking at the two measures, there appears to be a difference in the period of prescribed time set out in the Anti-Red Tape Act and proposed measure, Mr. President. The Anti-Red Tape Act requires application requests to be acted upon within a period prescribed in agency or citizen's charter of the office and should be longer than 5 days for simple transactions and 10 days for complex transactions. Nag-uusap nga ako kami ni Senator Ping, siguro isa sa mga dapat i-push natin na pag tumagal nitong time frame na ito, it would be deemed approved. Dito po sa ease of doing business, it requires agencies to process applications and communicate the decision within the following prescribed time. MSMEs, 3 days for simple transactions and 10 days for complex transactions. Special businesses, no longer than 30 days or as determined by agencies. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, the sponsor of the measure, may we ask how the sponsor envisions to reconcile these differences?
On the deemed approved provision, Mr. President, this is what's not in the ARTA. Anti-red tape law, wala po yung deemed approved. We actually added it on Section 7 of this particular bill, automatic approval of licenses, clearances, and permit applications. So, if I may read really quickly, an application for license and clearance or permit shall be deemed approved upon failure or inaction of the concerned national agency or local government unit to process and issue the license, clearance, or permit after the prescribed processing time has lapsed without informing the applicant of the error, omission, or additional documents required for submission, provided that all required documents, that's the key, provided that all required documents have been submitted and all required fees and charges have been paid. There's also another proviso, however, that in cases where the cause of delay is due to force majeure or natural or man-made disasters which may result to damage and destruction of documents, the prescribed processing time in the preceding section shall be suspended and appropriate adjustments shall be made. So there's also adjustments to that. Pero on the times, Mr. President, dear colleague, we actually shortened the time for simple applications for business. Kasi, Mr. President, yung mga sari-sari stores, MSMEs, and small and medium enterprises, our experience and the experience of Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, and I think 2 hours, believe, right? Yes, and I believe also Bukawe would be the same under the able handling of your sister, the mayor. They can actually approve permits within the day. Di naman siguro 2 hours, but within the day. So, yung kay Senator Sherwin, record time yun eh. Kaya nga TOYM yan dahil napakagaling nila sa Valenzuela. I think what we did was bring it a bit shorter time, 3 days for simple applications, and 10 days for complex applications. We also allowed a 30-day application that will require technical evaluation of similar conditions. Iba kasi, Your Honor, Mr. President, yung condition pag business. Kasi for example, you want to put up a petrochemical plant. Yung petrochemical plant, you cannot just guarantee that within 10 days mabibigyan na yan ng business or construction permit. Medyo kailangan tignan po yung design, yung plano, yung engineering, lahat yan, architectural, because it's a more complex situation.
That would be
Yes.
my next question,
Yes, sir.
distinguished colleague. Because in SB 1311 defines complex transactions as those that require interagency collaboration
Yes, that's
or
correct, Your Honor.
multi-department involvement to resolve complicated issues. Again, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, could you give us a example of a complex transaction, and how will you reconcile this definition with the definition provided in the Anti-Red Tape Act that we are already
My example,
implementing?
my perfect example, pagbukas ko po ng ice plant, ano po akong ice plant, na 4 na ice plant. And these ice plants, Your Honor, need to get ECCs,
Yeah.
environmental compliance certificates. I need to submit detailed engineering designs to the city or municipality we're located in. We have to get FDA approval also, certification. These are the type of it's not just a simple business permit that and registration with the DTI and SEC. So the more complex the business is, the more complex also are the requirements. Minsan nagkakapatong-patong. I'm also involved in the small power plants in my province, and that's even worse. That takes longer. When I put a solar power plant in Bukidnon, Mr. President, during my break from politics, one particular requirement, the DNR approved lot plan, took us 6 months. That's why, by experience, Mr. President, I know how difficult it is to be a businessman in this country. So, sabi ko, now with this armed with this information, we're trying to make it at least a bit more, how do you say, I'm looking for the right word, no, for business environment, favorable business environment for investors.
Friendly business
Yes.
environment. Mr. President, I would just like to ask the good sponsor, if you look at the Anti-Red Tape Act, there's also a definition on complex transactions. And if we are to adopt, Mr. President, the provisions in the Senate Bill 1311, given that the proposal only covers services for business applications, does this mean, Mr. President, we will have a different prescribed time for business applications? Again, as covered by Senate Bill 1311, compared to other frontline services or the remaining services covered, Mr. President, by the Anti-Red Tape Act?
Yes, Mr. President, during our hearings, Mr. President, it was not practicable yung 10-day the 10-day period given to, as a matter of fact, it's not implemented. I do not know of any government agency that actually, if you're going to put up a more complex business, large-scale, medium and large-scale business, where they've complied within the 10 days. Actually, in violation nga po, sa totoo lang.
True.
Halos lahat ng mga agencies except DTI, SEC, mabilis ang SEC, 15 minutes. yung
SEC,
iba talagang
are you sure?
Buwan-buwan. SEC, kaya one day. Online business registration.
Yeah.
So, but in the other agencies talaga, nako, Your Honor, sa NCIP nga lang, maghihingi ka ng certificate of non-overlap. Yung area mo, hindi naman covered sa NCIP, abot na 1 taon. Give you another case, DAR, if you're going to put up a solar power plant, it would take you 1 to 1.5 years to get DAR conversion. No joke po yan, 1 to 1.5 years. Depende sa mood ng secretary.
So
in this case, I don't think the secretary will give any conversion, this particular new secretary. So it needs to be adjusted, yung 10 days, baka hindi kakayanan. All the agencies agreed na kaya nila within 30 working days.
So again, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, if you talk about frontline services, it would fall under the Anti-Red Tape Act prescribed time. Now, when it comes to business permits,
Yes.
licenses, etc., it falls under this particular
Yes,
measure.
sir.
Am I correct, Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Again, Mr. President, with regards to Now, with regards to the Ease of Doing Business Commission, Section 19,
Opo.
it enumerates the powers and functions of the commission. May we ask the distinguished sponsor, how can the Ease of Doing Business Commission assist the Civil Service Commission in filing complaints as indicated in Section 19, I think, letter C? Because, Mr. President, in the Anti-Red Tape Act, they already indicated the placement of feedback system through the report card system that we were mentioning a while ago, and this is being administered by the Civil Service Commission.
Unfortunately, Mr. President, I don't I don't want to put it on record, but really, I might have to, that the implementation of the Anti-Red Tape Act, although the idea is so laudable, I salute you as author in the House and Senator Ping Lacson. Unfortunately, the actual implementation of the law has been really remiss in terms of filing cases. So, natatakot kasi yung businessman, Mr. President, pumunta sa civil service. First of all, they don't know what to do. The first people that they go, actually the people that they go to and complain to are the DTI. Sila talagang frontline na nagsusumbong dito sa mga DTI representatives na hindi nila nakukuha yung kanilang permits, yung licenses, and wala magawa ang DTI. So, well, they write. No, I'm sorry. I just got a violent reaction from the DTI. No, they write, no? They write the particular agency. Pero minsan sa baba, local governments and smaller agencies, not in the national capital region sometimes, nahihirapan sila, walang action. So, we decided to come up with a commission which is going to assist on the complaints and filing with the civil service. So,
Together
civil
with the
service
civil
pa rin.
service.
Yes, together. Actually, sila pa rin po ang lead agency when it comes to administrative, no? Civil service and ombudsman for the criminal case. So, kasi may instances po, Mr. President, na na masyadong bulgara na yung hingian o yung pahirapan for whatever reason, no? Whatever reason they may give, tapos bumabagsak sa lagay, natatakot talaga yung tao mag-file ng complaint. But under this commission, of course, they'll be assisted, they'll be protected, and they'll have an avenue, recourse. And ang plano po natin, we are going to amend this provision with the support of Senator Ralph Recto and come up with an agency, or not agency, an office under the DTI. So, kasi I know some of my colleagues here, are allergic to putting up new commissions.
Actually, I'm about to say that, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, that I have honestly have strong reservation in establishing commissions, but I will go away first with all of my questions regarding establishment of commission. But again, Mr. President, just
Although, Mr. President, I hope you don't mind if I cut it short. Although, we must agree the Philippine Competitiveness Count, the new one. Under the Philippine Competition Commission is doing their job very well.
I agree.
The reason why they set that commission up is really to make sure that there's it's antitrust, no monopolies of particular provisions.
They're facing a lot of cases now,
Yeah,
Mr. President.
but that's good, Mr. President. They're facing a lot of cases. That means they're ruffling a lot of feathers. And my point with this is, if we do it the same way, if it's business as usual po, iwan natin sa civil service, ombudsman, kung wala po magko-complain, hindi po effective yung Anti-Red Tape Act, hindi rin effective yung ease of doing business. So, we need to have an office na nakatutok po dito, maybe under the DTI para hindi na tayo kakreate ng bagong agency. They have actually an agency. They have the Competitiveness Bureau under the DTI. We will just strengthen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, we are asking all these questions to aid the sponsor in shaping this proposed measure in such manner that it will build up on the strengths and address the weaknesses of our existing laws. On that particular issue, Mr. President, on establishing a commission, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, how do we ensure that the proposed national policy is coherent with the respective business policy trusts of our local government units? Mr. President, how will the Commission account for the differences in the technical and resource capacities of the different LGUs?
And that's the main reason why we need the office, Mr. President, is because that office now will articulate and discuss and dialogue with the LGUs. Kasi minsan po, hindi pa pantay-pantay yung requirements ng iba't ibang LGU. As a matter of fact, the National Competitiveness Council, headed by Bill Luz, has been spearheading this. They're talking now to the LGUs and asking them to come up with a similar checklist. Believe it or not, Mr. President, kung naglagay ako ng ice plant sa Cagayan de Oro, iba po yung requirements ng ice plant ko sa Iloilo, sa Leganes, sa area po ni Senator Drilon. And iba din po yung ice plant requirements dun sa Kabangkalan, in my father's hometown, in Negros Occidental. So, this commission, or this office that we will create, will harmonize it all. They will be the ones to go down as part of the DTI to talk to all the LGUs under their mandate to harmonize all the requirements. Kasi ngayon iba-iba at napakahirap at napakatindi deal. Same business, but in another town is a different set of requirements. Parang red tape na rin yun eh. Red tape talaga kasi pagdating mo sa isang town letter A, mabilis lang. Town letter B, magkatabi lang. Napakahirap naman.
Walang foreign pattern.
Kaya itong grupong ito, Mr. President, this group will be the one that will be in charge of that. So, thank you, Mr. President. Tulog na ba
Mr.
tayo?
President,
Majority Leader.
with the permission of the two gentlemen, the hour is late. We hope the debate is very interesting, Mr. President. And so we wish that more of our colleagues are here to listen. So if you do not mind, we will ask the gentlemen to suspend their interpellations and continue tomorrow, Mr. President.
Yeah, spare us from the long debates, Mr. President, and maybe that the ease of doing business will take longer with all these debates, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. So,
So what is the motion of the majority?
To the
with
wisdom of the
permission
majority
two
leader.
and the sponsor, thank you very much.
Yes,
I
with the-
move to suspend the
No objection from me,
consideration
Mr. President.
of
I thank
Senate
the
Bill
majority.
1311 under Committee Report number 33.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
May we recognize the minority leader, Mr. President, for
Minority leader is
manifestation?
recognized.
Mr. President, the Majority Leader, this representation, Senator Gordon, Senator Lacson, and the presiding officer, belong to a particular school insofar as parliamentary practices are concerned. We belong to that school where we face the presiding officer and address the presiding officer rather than the other gentleman on the floor. Kasi po kadalasan, gaya ngayon, mukhang silang dalawa na nag-uusap, hindi na po namin naintindihan kung ano yung pinagsasabi nila. Kaya siguro yun lang pong pakiusap namin. Maybe we can go back to the sophistication of the older members of this Senate, 17th Congress, and we can reinstate the practice of not showing your behind to the presiding officer, but rather address the presiding officer and address the other colleague in the third person, because that will also avoid heated personal discussions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minority Leader.
Please
The
subscribe
gentleman
to
of
the wisdom of the minority leader, and this representation would like to apologize for
Showing your posterior.
showing my behind to the
Your posterior, not your behind.
to the Senate President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
President,
The
maybe in
gentleman
the
from
next,
Bukidnon.
maybe in the new Senate, in the 4th Bonifacio area, we can have podiums that don't swivel anymore.
Majority Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. As a matter of fact, we should do that. I don't see the reason for allowing the rostrums to be, swiveled. we should remain permanent facing. What we can do is stand on a podium that is adjacent to each other instead of front and back. Thank you. Anyway, Mr. President, we take note of the manifestation of the Minority Leader. In the meantime, I move to change the referral of PS Resolution 312 from the Committee on Rules to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
And then, Mr. President, yesterday, we made two motions to transfer the referrals of Senate Bill 221 and 128 from the Committee on Public Service to the Committee on Rules. And the same manner, we also moved to transfer these referrals to 1275 of Committee on Public Order to the Rules. And motions to rectify, these motions were to rectify the bills that were reported out by the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, chaired by Senator Gordon, under Committee Report number 18. However, as you have also brought to our attention yesterday, we found out that there are two resolutions and three more bills of the same that were similarly situated. So that needs to be transferred to the same purpose of rectifying the mentioned committee report to the Justice Committee. So I move to transfer the referrals of PS Resolution 70, PS Resolution 126, Senate Bill 868, 1285, and 1310 from the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs to the Committee on Rules, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, well, we can do that tomorrow. Mr. President, I move to adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, March 18, 2017.
Session is adjourned to 3 o'clock Wednesday. Thank you.